There we go.
Hey guys, what's going on? Cole and I are here for another live commentary for The Phantom, the 93? Is that when it
96.
came out? 96, okay.
96, yeah.
96 Billy Zane classic. This is probably the beginning of the end of his career. That didn't really get started. Well, what year was Titanic?
Well, it was the year after this, but I mean, this is sort of the beginning and end of him maybe being like a leading man, you know?
Yeah.
Like Titanic's a big movie, but he's not the main guy in it, right? And that's kind of how the rest of his career would go. He'd be a supporting actor, but never really the main guy. This movie was probably supposed to like launch his career into that phase of being leading man, but he did not pick the right movie, or whoever picked it for him, his agent or whatever.
I would have loved to have seen his agent pitch this to him. No, look, Billy, you're going to be the next big superhero.
Yeah.
You're going to be the next Christopher Reeve.
Something like that.
But
it's weird because like starting with Indiana Jones at the start of the 80s, you had sort of like the emergence of like sort of like a 30s-ish pulp hero type thing on the screen, and the 90s saw some attempts at this too, and they were not very good. Like, I like The Rocketeer. We were talking about The Rocketeer the other day, which is, you know, an 80s comic but based on like 30s pulp stuff, and that's 91. And I always wonder why it didn't become a bigger thing, because I thought it was a pretty good movie. But then like the movie I think is even worse than The Phantom, I think, is 94's The Shadow, starring Alec Baldwin. And that's an actual bona fide pulp guy from like the 30s, precursor to Batman. The Shadow was very popular in like short stories and a radio show. Radio shows being a big part of, you know, pop culture in the 30s. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows. And I remember that better than I remember this. They're both very bad, and they were both big failures. But I remember the other one better, even though I didn't see it in theater, whereas I saw this in an empty theater in 1996. Nobody went. I'm going to look up some of the stats here to see exactly how poorly it performed.
Sorry, get a banner up here. There we go.
Yeah.
Nice purple banner for you.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, it had a budget of $45 million, fairly sizable for mid-90s, and a box office of $17 million, so quite the flop.
Well, I mean, some pretty big stars from the time, too. Christy Swanson, Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Treat Williams, sort of, I guess. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Not exactly a star, but definitely an established name.
Mm-hmm. You think Treat was his given name?
No. I thought
it
about that.
Sounds like a gay porn star, doesn't it? Treat.
You're in for a treat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's funny is like the earliest stages of this movie in pre-production was like that Sergio Leone was interested in making it, which sounds just crazy in hindsight. And Joe Dante was going to be a director for it at some point, and he left.
This was going to be before Spider-Man. Okay.
Yeah. Joel Schumacher was not formally attached, but he was considered.
He just passed away recently, I think.
Yeah, Joel Schumacher. So he had an interesting, somewhat underrated career, I guess. I mean, because he's known for, obviously, his interesting homo rainbow attempt at Batman.
I can totally see Schumacher doing this film.
Yeah, but I mean, he did some good movies too. What's interesting, I didn't know about Schumacher until after his death and reading some stuff, was like he was another one of those guys like Wilt Chamberlain who claimed to have like slept with like thousands and thousands of people. He claimed to have had like between 10 and maybe even 20,000 like sexual partners in his lifetime.
Well, he was gay, right?
Yeah, so all men, obviously.
I mean, I believe it.
It's possible because like he talked about like obviously being particularly active in the 80s, I guess.
I just hope he used protection.
Well, I think that was part of it, is that he had like expressed that he had been sort of lucky, you know, given how many people contracted AIDS during that period, and that it didn't happen to him. But yeah, no, I didn't know that was something he ever boasted about or even talked about. So yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, Zane was a huge fan of the comic strip, which has its own weird history. So
Mhm.
like he was pretty high on being in the movie, I guess. And apparently Bruce Campbell was in consideration for the lead. So man, that's weird.
Briscoe County Jr. That was Bruce Campbell, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, it's just like some weird stuff that I could kind of see Bruce Campbell in this thing too.
Yeah. I have no idea what Bruce Campbell was doing at the time.
Yeah. He was in Briscoe County Jr.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Never saw it.
Like a Western television show. 27 episodes, Fox Network, 93 through 94.
Yeah, so I mean this was a comic strip that originated back in the 30s. So like so it is a legitimate pulp hero type guy. And what's so weird is like, you know, I think my earliest I can't remember when this movie came out, but you know, there was a show called Phantom 2040, an animated show that I used to watch in the mid 90s. That was like the continuation of it, because the whole idea is like that the Phantom exists through all these decades. So here's a 2040 version, and then this movie comes out, which is like the original sort of version, the 30s one. So they just seem so at odds with each other. You know, I never actually read the strip, but I think it was in and out of publication in newspapers for a few decades. And it was at its peak, it was really popular. Like over 100 million people were worldwide were reading it. And I know there's this whole thing about legacy of them, like, you know, passing. It seems like he's an immortal crime fighter because he's around for decades. But the idea is the legacy is it's the father always passing it on to the son.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was about to bring up. So it's like a ring or something, right? That goes into power.
Yeah, I don't even know exactly what his powers are supposed to be. Like he doesn't. Like he's an ordinary person without any powers. He's sort of like a Batman type person, but the ring does give him abilities of some sort. I don't know.
The ability to wear a purple jumpsuit, purple tights.
Like can't even remember if it's in the movie, but like he had a wolf named Devil that he trained, and his horse was named Hero. So, and this sort of fit again with the time when you had these pulp hero movies being somewhat successful, although again, The Shadow just a couple years earlier had to have been a big debacle. And then this is kind of the end of them, really.
What was the one that Frank Miller directed after the Sin City?
The Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So The Spirit again I guess his origins, I guess you would call pulp too, but The Spirit was around so long I don't even associate it with one era. But yeah, it's The Spirit by Will Eisner, which is, if you're just talking like strictly like comic strips, he's easily the biggest superhero as far as that goes, comic strips as opposed to comic books. And Will Eisner is, you know, one of the giants of comics, and he's one of the only ones I don't have much appreciation for. I never got really into Will Eisner's work, whether it was The Spirit or the other stuff he did. And I mean, he was such a big deal that when the very first like comic book Hall of Fame was made, he was an inaugural member along with like Jack Kirby. He was like one of the very first people put in. So Will Eisner is just huge in that. But yeah, the Frank Miller movie is so bad it hurts.
It is.
And I think part of the reason is they're trying to do it. He tries to do it the same way he did Sin City, right? It's shot the same way and everything. And that's really not what The Spirit was like.
So Frank Miller never actually wrote The Spirit.
I don't know if this is another thing I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't know if there were any revivals of it or not after Will Eisner died. It was another thing where it was a long running thing where Will Eisner did it for decades. There were probably a few revivals by different artists. I don't know if Frank Miller ever did them or not. I mean, Frank Miller was clearly a fan since he got to direct the movie, but I don't know.
I just think it's an odd choice. Like he wrote so many great things, why he didn't choose to adapt something that he wrote.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, maybe it was just because he really had a love for it. I'll have to look into that sometime. But I don't have anything bad to say about The Spirit. I mean, it was definitely very successful comic strip, and Will Eisner had his own sort of defined style that he's known for. I'm always amused whenever I see his signature, because the way he writes, it looks exactly the same way as like Walt Disney wrote his. They look like they have like the same sort of, they use like the same sort of handwriting. So from a distance, like Will Eisner almost looks like it's like part of a Disney production. Like, it's weird if you ever look it up. He uses just the same sort of lettering. But anyway, yeah, if you're talking about the movie The Spirit, directed by Frank Miller, that one is so bad that like I literally couldn't even do a commentary on it, because there's just no enjoyment to be derived from it. Like, some movies, you know, they're bad, but you can get a kick out of them because they're amusing and funny. You know, I just watched Plan 9 from Outer Space the other day, which, you know, one of the reasons it rose to prominence was because there were, in the early 90s, somebody had come out with like an article calling it the worst film of all time. And like, so many people in the years since, like, you know, have said it can't be the worst film of all time. As bad as it is, it's too amusing, really. You know, there's too many films that just suck start to finish, that they, you know, there's nothing, no enjoyment can be derived from them, right? But so that's kind of how I feel about something like some of these movies, like The Spirit. Like, I couldn't possibly get anything out of like doing a live commentary of The Spirit. It would just be terrible.
I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah, I have no. But as much as I don't remember The Phantom, when I saw that it was on Prime here, I was kind of interested just to watch it again for my own self. But I thought a better way of doing that is we might as well make a live commentary out of it and share it with other people. So I'm kind of I'm looking forward to it. I know it's not a good movie, but there's so much I forget. And who wouldn't want to see 1996 circa Catherine Zeta-Jones?
Christy Swanson.
Christy Swanson too. Honorable mention for sure.
All right, guys, we'll go ahead and get this started. If we'll get our give everybody a chance to get their. This is on Amazon Prime for at least in the U.S. and Canada.
Right. So it starts with, I think, the Paramount symbol. Mm-hmm. So if you've got like the mountain on your screen, that's where I've got it queued up to. I'm about 2 seconds in where you just see the mountain. So we can count down from there. Go from there, and I'll probably again have to turn my volume down. It's probably too loud, but we'll adjust that as we go.
Just trying to get mine to the Paramount logo. Okay, so everybody, we're at the Paramount logo, and we're going to count down. And on 0, push play.
All right.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Yeah, and I've always been a fan of Billy Zane. I feel too bad about this movie because it probably had a lot to do with the path his career took. Feels like he's one of those sort of unappreciated guys, and I've always pushed for like 20 years that he should have been Lex Luthor.
Yeah, Cole and I both saw this in the theater, fortunately enough, and I think the only reason I saw it maybe because Billy Zane was in it.
Like I said, I can't remember exactly when I'd first seen the Phantom 2040 show. I wasn't even a fan of it. It was just a show I watched because at the time I was getting WSBK, which was not a normal channel people in my area would get. It was part of like a package that we paid for. So it was something like my friends couldn't watch, so I watched it. All right, so this is about like a white European kid that winds up in Africa. Again, I have no idea if this ties into the original comic or not, if it has African roots or what. But that's where this is where the ring comes from here. Is that it's somewhere in the jungles of Africa, possessed by some tribe.
Destined to avenge his father's death. All right, there's the ring.
Ooh. See, like that looks stupid, but I feel like that's on purpose. Like, as they're trying to go for that pulp look.
I was fine with it. Thought it looked good.
Bengala Jungle, 1938. So right away you think of like, you know, again, something like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Looks like what they were going for.
Yeah. The 30s is just such an age of adventure, just because that was sort of like when the genre sort of exploded, whether it was in novels or comic books or radio shows. You know, it's all adventure. And world traveling was a big part of it, because now the world was opening up a bit more. There's airplanes, you know, so you got people from like places like Great Britain or America and they're traveling to like exotic places or lost places or uncivilized places. All that in there.
So I was such a fan of Billy Zane in Demon Knight. I think the only reason I saw this is because Billy Zane was in this.
I'm a big fan of Demon Knight too, but this movie had probably come and gone by the time I saw it, I think. So I cannot tell you what my timeline exactly is on Billy Zane as far as like what movies I saw him in or when I recognized him distinctly as an actor. I have no idea really.
And of course, we've covered Dead Calm on the movie discussion Pocket Dimension.
Yeah, which is a really good performance by him.
It is. He does a great job. I think he's a really good actor. I mean, still.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you'd like it to. Mm-hmm. When you do films like The Phantom. Unfortunately.
So now we've got another staple of the genre. We've got a big ancient bridge.
So Demon Knight would have been 1 year before this in 95.
Yeah.
Oh, they're making the kid do it?
Yeah, they are.
Obviously, this is not going to work, right? It's like held up by vines.
Yeah, and they're making him take a big, heavy truck across.
We'll sacrifice Short Round.
Again, he's not white. He's expendable. There that goes. Oh, because that was another sort of part of the era was like, I think a lot of it was unintentional racism, but, there'll be a lot of caricatures of people, from different things that we, nowadays would be seen as pretty offensive, whether it's African or Asian or whatever. And I think a lot of it was unintentional. Like it was more ignorance, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could call it that.
Actually, I'm pretty sure the Spirit had like a black sidekick that is like pretty frowned upon these days because of the stereotypes he embodied.
Was it Johnny Quest? It was like an Indian or a Middle Eastern character with a turban on.
Yeah, Johnny Quest had a friend named Haji.
That's actually that term is a racial slur for Middle Eastern people.
Wow, and that was his actual name. That's pretty bad.
I mean, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
It came from him.
Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense, yeah. So that's not a good thing. Well, the kid made it across. Now they're talking about the ghost who walks. We don't care about your weird superstition.
So he's got some sort of skull brand on his face?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what's going on here. Is like, are they working for him or are they all like together? I'm not sure.
Me either.
Yeah, I think they're just like, I don't think the other guys have a clue. I think the guy with the skull mark is like in charge and they're just sort of doing what he says. I think, maybe. I don't know.
They're just contract labor.
Yeah. They're being watched.
Where was this again?
It must be somewhere in South America. I didn't catch what it said at the start. It must be Central or South America. Just like we saw in the last movie we did for the show, Apocalypto.
Yeah, that's a great movie. I've been thinking about that. Watched it the other day. Really need to go do some more research on Mayans and Aztecs.
Yeah. Just said, I really think they need to do a movie or some movies about like the Spanish conquests in those areas and their clashes with the Aztecs, because it's all very violent and dramatic. It would make for good storytelling. At this point, you're wondering where like the death traps are. Because if you watch stuff like Indiana Jones and stuff like this, it's like you can't just stroll into these temples and just walk out unscathed.
Yeah, of course not. It's gonna. What was it in Temple of Doom? What happened to the people when they melt or something?
Well, I mean, the first one is the opening scene of the first one is the one that's known for like the booby traps. Although, of course, there's stuff that happens in all three movies.
Yeah.
I mean, the melting happens towards the end. After that's when they open up the Ark of the Covenant. Anybody that like looks into the Ark of the Covenant, they melt it. But
that was a great effect in there too.
Yeah. Oh, one of them's gone.
He just got choked out by a vine.
Yeah. That skull thing he's holding is like special skull. It had glowing eyes. Well, that's one down.
This guy has a Tommy gun, of course.
Yeah. It's like the weapon of the 30s. Chicago typewriter. Uh-oh, drums. That's never a good thing. What does it mean? Nothing. Oh, I think it means something.
Now we're in LA. Oh, wait, no.
No. Okay, so this isn't South America because there's an elephant. So it must be somewhere in Southeast Asia, I guess.
Africa?
Yeah, it must.
No?
Yeah, I'm being stupid. Of course, it must be Africa because the whole thing is. Yeah, because the Phantom has his roots in Africa. So that was pretty stupid of me not to consider that. If oh, see, there's his wolf devil. Okay. All right, here comes our hero. This again a bit different because he uses guns. Although even Batman used guns in his like original incarnation at the end in 1939.
Nile crocodiles. That's what they've got in Africa. Those are bad. Those are bad suckers.
Yeah. I think the biggest crocodiles in the world are in Australia.
The saltwater, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They're also like the most aggressive. They're the ones that eat people pretty frequently.
Yeah. The animal that kills the most people in Africa is like hippos.
Yeah.
Like hippos will tear you to pieces. Like, don't go anywhere near a river in Africa. If it's not a crocodile, it's a hippo.
Because they're really territorial, the males, I think, and they can bite a crocodile in half with their jaws. So
I should look that up. See if we can get some video of a hippo-croc encounter. It's got to be some. I've seen video of various animals having encounters with crocodiles, like tigers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I saw a leopard like actively hunting them. It jumped into the water to fight one, which I think is insane.
Wow.
Because the water is where they're the most dangerous. Yeah, the purple really looks weird in the jungle.
It looks weird in general. I mean, it probably wasn't as weird in the 30s, but...
This guy says, I killed him years ago. Yeah, and the third is, the idea is just to make it stand out in some way, right? So
yeah.
Purple, why not? Wonder how many stunts Billy Zane did.
Probably not many.
No. Because, I can't think of him having too many particularly physical roles besides this movie. Where he's doing, like, fighting and stuff. Well,
you've got the tattoo of the people that killed my father.
Yeah. Well, this guy said he killed the Phantom years ago, so maybe he must have killed the previous Phantom, his father. I don't remember. But yeah, see, he doesn't have like extra abilities or anything. He's just a man. But he's what you would call in the business a badass normal. Batman being the ultimate example.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I never was the biggest fan of the Batman comics until Dark Knight, of course, because I like my superheroes to have powers. To be mutants or whatever, however you want to say, or aliens.
I guess I like all kinds. My favorite is a badass normal, Moon Knight. Although sometimes he's given sort of ill-defined powers, but usually he's mostly like a Batman character where he's just a skilled guy. But he has some supernatural stuff to him, like sometimes he can come back from the dead.
Mm.
And also sometimes he'll have prophetic dreams. But for the most part, like he doesn't like have super strength or speed or invulnerability or anything. He uses tech. I mean, that was part of the reason it was hard for Moon Knight to establish himself, I think, beyond people that were really into comics, because they just sort of saw him as maybe sort of a poor man's Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Also because, I mean, a lot of Marvel heroes don't use capes. And Moon Knight's one of the only Marvel heroes, really, that's known for having a cape. But, like, name all Marvel's biggest heroes. They don't have capes. I mean, Thor does sometimes, but it's not necessarily part of his look. You know, whether you're talking about the X-Men or the Fantastic Four or various Avengers, most of them don't have capes. The Vision has a cape, but the Vision's not, like, a household name.
Storm have a cape?
Storm had a cape, yep.
Trying to think who else. Rogue sometimes, maybe?
Rogue, sometimes when she had her power set where she didn't have, like, super strength, would sometimes wear, like, a cloak. Like, she'd have, like, a cape with, like, a hood over it.
Yeah.
Maybe but that was usually when she was in her, like, original power, which is when she didn't have the Ms. Marvel powers. I mean, most people are familiar with Rogue being a flying brick, which is a term for somebody with super strength, durability, and flight. And that was actually stolen from Ms. Marvel, who is now Captain Marvel. Because the idea was her mutant power was she could absorb people's powers and keep them temporarily, but by touching them. But in the case of Ms. Marvel, the contact was so long that she wound up absorbing it permanently.
Mm-hmm.
It also put Ms. Marvel into like a coma for a long time, and for a while they shared psyches. Like Ms. Marvel's like psyche was like sometimes inside Rogue, like talking to her and fighting her.
When was that? Because I don't really remember Rogue before she could fly.
I'm trying to remember when Rogue was introduced. Rogue was introduced in the 80s. Would have been sometime in the mid 80s.
Okay, see, I wasn't reading comics.
Yeah. Oh, I know. By the time I was reading it, you know. But in some of those like more famous X-Men comics from the later 80s, early 90s, they still had that connection. They would often flash back to it or talk about it. Okay. Is my audio still working?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Damn camera. Fix this shit. I could just revert to my normal camera, but my default camera. But well, he's got like a lair, of course, with all these books.
What company put these out?
The comics?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I'll just go to the other camera. Okay, I'm gonna do my grainier camera for now, just so the other doesn't come off. Doesn't matter, it's just a live commentary.
This Dolph Lundgren was considered for the lead role when it was in development in the late 80s, early 90s.
He'd already played He-Man, so he was perfect.
Yeah, that was a huge success.
Since he nailed He-Man so well. I wouldn't mind doing that as a live commentary either, the Masters of the Universe movie, because it's so dumb.
Yeah, it's so bad. I don't know.
Well, you know what drives me nuts about movies like that is I hate it when they take like something from a completely fantasy world and it's always been in its own fantasy world, but for some reason the movie adaptation is like, we'll put it in the real world. Like that's what they did with like the first couple Smurfs movies too, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, people love the Smurfs and they liked the show and it was a lot of fun taking place in its own fairy world. But for a movie, we don't think that's, you know, the right approach. So we're just going to stick them in the real world and have all that stuff happen to them. Like who the hell grew up watching He-Man and thought, oh, it'd be so cool if they were like in New Jersey driving around in a pink convertible, which is literally what they do.
We'll get Courtney Cox. We'll put her in there. Then we'll create a bunch of weird characters that weren't even in the cartoon or the...
I like how the guy they cast as like Master at Arms or whatever his name was, you know, Man of Arms or whatever, was like 65 years old. Like, why did they cast such an old geezer for the part? Like, he's not supposed to be necessarily like a really young guy in his 20s, but I mean that they went way too old with that.
Was he the one that had the weird jaw, the action figure that had like the metal?
No, that's a different guy.
Oh, okay.
That guy had his own. I think Jaw. He might have even been called like Steel Jaw or something. I don't know.
That's probably right. They didn't really try too hard on the names.
And so I missed what happened in that scene, but now we're on Long Island, New York, at some rich person's house. Long Island, New York is also where Moon Knight's mansion is. Speaking of rich crime fighters. Miss Palmer. Dressed like friggin', she looks like Amelia Earhart. I guess they're trying to show that she's an adventurer too, maybe.
Yeah, they let women drive back then?
Well, she was a different sort of woman. You can tell by the beret, right?
Right.
In any decade, a beret on a woman means like feisty rebel. That even checks out nowadays.
Yeah, she has pants on. So
yeah,
that says it all, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she looks basically like a photo of Amelia Earhart. That's her mother. So she's probably like the black sheep of the family or something.
Oh, of course.
You know, they want her to settle down and get married to a nice man, but she wants to forge her own path.
This is 4 years after Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah. Another movie that was completely different once the executive meddling got through with it. I mean, isn't that the whole reason like he did the show later to like do his like true vision of what he meant the first time? Yeah.
Yeah, Joss Whedon, right?
Yeah, Joss Whedon.
Yeah, because they totally like got rid of his original script, right? Or screenplay.
Oh yeah, they just hacked it to bits and changed everything.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on that film. I don't really like it, but I don't hate it either.
I don't have any desire to ever watch it again. I haven't seen it in 15 years maybe, and I don't care to see it again. And it's not because I love the show, because I never watched the show. I've never even seen a full episode, and that was a show that like people of my generation are obsessed with. Like everybody my age watched that show.
Look at this. Gibbs has this on Laserdisc and Blu-ray.
What does that say about me? Well, the Laserdisc means you're cool. The Blu-ray, that's the more suspect one. Because the Laserdisc is like a cool collector's item thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he must know this movie pretty well. I can't remember it at all. And that's such a loss. Like, it's not like this is one of those movies that it's never even shown up like on TV in like all these years since. Like, it's just been buried. Like, please forget this movie existed.
Well, it's always a running joke. You bring up one, you got to bring up, you bring up Phantom, you got to bring up the Shadow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to. I hope the Shadow becomes available somewhere because I'd love to do that one because I do remember that one pretty well and how stupid it was.
I don't remember it either. I didn't see that one in the theater. I don't think because I've never really been a big Alec Baldwin fan.
Well, I mean, Alec Baldwin himself is weird because, like, obviously he was miscast as the Shadow, but I mean he was miscast a lot. He was one of those guys, again, that was they tried to force him to be like a leading man, and it wasn't really his thing. Like, Alec Baldwin's been in some good movies and played some good roles, but he's not really the, dashing hero type.
I like Glenn Ross.
Yeah. I mean, he's very famous for his role in that. And what's cool is, like, that was, as good as the play is, like, his whole role wasn't in the play. That was invented for the movie.
Oh, really?
And it really adds to it.
What kind of put him on the map? Was it that movie?
I'd say probably like Hunt for Red October.
Okay, I forgot he was in that.
Yeah, he got to be Jack Ryan.
Okay.
The movie's like 1990. That's a movie that I loved a lot growing up. Now I still like it, but I don't love it quite as strongly. I still really like it though.
There was some promotion Coca-Cola did that you could send in bottle tops or something, and I got a Hunt for Red October poster, like a one. I don't know if it was original one sheet, but looked like a one sheet poster.
And
I'd never
like,
even seen the movie at the time either.
Yeah. That's one of those movies that was on. It was to this day it comes on TV a lot, and I used to always watch it on TV. Like it's a movie I never considered buying because I could just seem to watch it whenever I wanted because it was always on TV. It's also the movie that maybe introduced me to the Russian national anthem, which I've always really enjoyed. Which shows up in a lot of movies. Like the two national anthems you hear in movies are the American and Russian ones, and you get to hear both in like Rocky IV. Plus, Living in America as performed by, what's his name? James Brown.
Okay.
Probably still Dolph Lundgren's greatest triumph and most iconic role.
Apparently, he was in Knots Landing, 84 through 85. Then,
I know that show existed, but I don't know what it was.
Me either, really. He was in Beetlejuice. That's right.
Baldwin, yeah, he was one of the parents.
And she's having a baby. Then Married to the Mob, Working Girl, Talk Radio, Great Balls of Fire. I forgot he was in that.
I don't remember him in that at all. I don't remember him Working Girl either. Of course, those are both movies I haven't seen in a long, long time. I remember he was one of the first celebrities I was aware of like, how often celebrities date each other. Like he was with Kim Basinger.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the first like celebrity couples I was aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Kim Basinger. I'm lukewarm on both of them. They're both fine, but I think what's funny to me is like Kim Basinger. I think she won her Oscar, like Best Supporting Actress or something, or it was either Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress for L.A. Confidential, which I love that movie. I think she's the weakest part of the entire movie. I think everybody else is better than her, and she's the one that won the Oscar. And I think it's an easy part to play. Like, I don't think it took any talent to play that part. You could have gotten almost anybody of that, like, age or whatever, and they would have done fine. And yet she gets all this praise. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying. I love it. We might even. It's weird because you would think a movie like L.A. Confidential is so well known and popular that it wouldn't be good necessarily to do on our show. But I've always considered it because I feel like it's a movie that's been completely forgotten. Like it was a big deal when it came out, and then it just faded into the background. Like nobody seems to ever talk about it. And I really like that movie. It's one of my favorites. One of my favorites of the '90s.
Oh, which one is that?
L.A. Confidential.
Oh yeah.
I mean, huge, like star-studded cast. A lot of effort with money was put into it, and it was very well received in its time. It was a big hit, and it was well received. Again, you had at least one or two actors getting Oscar nominations for it. I just feel like nobody talks about it anymore. In like the last 20 years, it just seems to have faded into the background.
I don't think that's true.
I haven't heard other people really talk about it.
Is he about to kill himself or something? Oh, okay.
I can't remember what's going on here. I mean, there's our main bad guy, but I don't know why he's killing. Oh, that's Treat Williams. Okay, there you
go. Yeah, Treat with a mustache. I don't think I've ever seen Treat with a mustache before.
As much as I hate air travel now, I would like pay extra to be able to travel like this.
Of course, that's when planes like crashed like 50% of the time. So.
Yeah, but at least it was more enjoyable. Like you weren't crammed in like sardines. Air travel was very classy in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, even into the 60s. It was. I mean, that was also just because like only really the wealthy could afford to do it. But.
Do you remember the Concorde?
Oh yeah, it's a shame they retired it.
I remember I saw it a few times.
What was it? It could do like Paris to New York in like 90 minutes or something crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been retired for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Did any Concorde ever crash?
Not that I'm aware of. Maybe it was no desire anymore. Maybe they just didn't have a
Where did these women come from? Oh, right. They literally came. So they're like air pirates. I love this concept too. Like this, I don't think this has ever happened in the history of aviation. Is that you've had like planes board other planes. But I love the concept though.
I'm getting Tailspin vibes off of this.
Yeah, like I love Tailspin. I love some of the Miyazaki stuff that was influenced this, like Castle in the Sky.
What's the one we did with
Porco Rosso? Yeah, Porco Rosso and Castle in the Sky both have like sky pirates in them, and they're awesome.
Was Michael Keaton the voice in that? The one we watched?
Yeah, he was really good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the voice of Porco. Rather be a pig than a fascist. Yeah. On Netflix Canada, all the Studio Ghibli movies are available, so I recommend that to everybody.
Yeah, I looked. I don't think they're available in America.
Good to see you, Phantom. That's just a lame costume. Yeah, I've already lost what's going on here.
I think they took maybe her hostage.
Yeah.
He's got to save her or something.
Yeah, she was on her way to see this guy, mustache guy.
He's got to go buy some more eyeliner.
Hard to come by in the 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's his short round. Zach. So that's Zach, that's Hero, and that's Devil. Devil's the wolf. He calls him Ghost Who Walk. Like, if he's based out of Africa, where'd he get this kid who's like Indian? Okay. It's one of the guys from the beginning. Oh, she looks great. I forgot that she had like this weird, cool, sexy air pirate thing going on here.
Me too.
No, we had no idea that it was illegal to kidnap people at gunpoint. Thank you for informing us. One of those Luger-style pistols, too.
Mm-hmm. Is that James Remar? I know he's in this.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Quill is the character's name.
Yeah. He was the father on Dexter, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like that was like the first time I'd sort of heard the name, but I knew it, and I realized he's like one of the main guys in The Warriors.
Yeah.
Which is a movie I really like.
He died not too long ago also, I think.
That's too bad.
Everybody's kicking the bucket, man.
I mean, Kirk Douglas made it to over 100. So,
yeah.
I mean, he died recently, but he was over 100.
Yeah.
And you say, I think I told you this before, but speaking of like the over 100 club, like Beverly Cleary's still alive. She's like 103. You know, she did like the Ramona books and a bunch of other.
No, I'm wrong. James Remar's still alive.
Okay, that's good. And what's his name? Spielberg's father is still alive, and he's over 100.
Wow. Was he? He was in the concentration camps, wasn't he?
I think so. And like I said, it was like one of the reasons why he wanted to do both. Well, you know, the Schindler's List, and then later Saving Private Ryan. Like Saving Private Ryan was specifically sort of like a tribute to his father, because his father was involved in World War II. And you think at the time, he's like, well, my father's like in his 80s. This is my last chance. Got to get this done. And like now, over 20 years later, his father's still around, which is nice. So there are the people that get there. It seems like, as far as showbiz goes, it feels like Betty White's going to outlive everybody. She's in her 90s. Every once in a while, she trends on Twitter, and everybody thinks she must be dead, but she's not. She never is.
Yeah, James Remar's had a hell of a career.
He's in lots of good stuff.
I'm trying to remember what he was on a show, a big show. I don't know if it was Sopranos or The Wire or something.
I don't know. Dexter was where I recognized the name. I watched like the first 3 or 4 seasons of that. Oh, he disarmed her. Oh, femme fatale going for it.
Oh,
didn't work. Like, I'm the Phantom. I'm not moved by such things.
She's a lefty.
Shouldn't this purple jumpsuit tell you something? You're barking up the wrong tree, lady. I'm an independent woman. I don't need your help. Yeah, the whole crew is women. No idea if that was done in the comic or not. And of course, when I was talking about like globe-trotting adventurer from this era, the big one from comics was the Belgian hero Tintin from Hergé. It's funny for like, so I know, like I said, a few years ago when they made the Tintin movie and it flopped, and I didn't really understand why. It's like, well, people just don't know who Tintin is. I was like, really? I didn't really realize that like most Americans didn't see the cartoon. Because he was mostly like throughout the decades known over in Europe, of course, France and Belgium in particular. But in the early '90s, they made a cartoon of it, and that's what I used to watch. So I didn't know that didn't actually air in the United States most places. But one thing that occurred to me, I own several of the original collections now, and my favorite one is always the one called the Blue Lotus, which mostly takes place in Shanghai. And it's cool because it actually shows some of the Second Sino-Japanese War is going on at the time of this, which is one of the many little wars that folded into the larger World War II conflict as it got going. So this would have been like 1937-ish. It would have been before World War II started, but Japan had already invaded China. And I remember for years thinking, I don't understand how come that's the only comic that deals with anything sort of World War II related. I was like, how come Tintin's always fighting smugglers and stuff? And yet, even though he was published during like these years, how come like World War II is never mentioned? How come he never fights Nazis? It's like, well, of course, like it was once again, I wasn't really using common sense. I mean, it's a Belgian comic, so it was made in Belgium. Belgium was occupied by the Nazis throughout the war, so they couldn't. They were. That Hergé was allowed to continue to make it at all was kind of a miracle, but he obviously couldn't have them fighting Nazis. The Nazis were right there pointing guns at everybody. So yeah, so that was something I didn't really think of until years later. It's like, oh, of course. Because yeah, so many of these pulp heroes, like a big part of it is usually fighting Nazis at some point. It's like, how come Tintin never fought the Nazis? It's like, he probably would have if the Nazis hadn't freaking conquered Belgium at the time. But yeah, at that time, there was a specific Belgian newspaper that he was published in, and yeah, they were taken over by the Nazis just like everything else in Belgium. I mean, I like heroes that have wolves. You don't see too many of them anymore.
Jon Snow.
Yeah, that's right. He's one of the more recent ones with his direwolf.
Ghost.
Yeah, Ghost. But there was one of the G.I. Joes had a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was Snake Eyes, but it was somebody pretty cool like that. Because I remember even his toy came with a toy wolf, which I thought was awesome. I'll have to look up who that was. Cool biplane and float plane all in one. Love stuff like that. Trust me, I'm a man in a purple jumpsuit and a mask. Obviously, I know what I'm doing. Yeah, so the island was called Bengala, which I think it just made up.
So what the hell is she doing?
Escaping?
Oh.
Right? He rescued her, but they're being chased, I guess. Why she's on the pontoon, I'm not sure. Oh, for some reason, maybe the plane's damaged?
Yeah, I think it is.
So this is their way of getting off the plane safely. They're going to jump down onto the horse, I guess. Yeah, here comes Hero. Do you remember Zorro's horse's name?
Mm-mm.
Tornado. Zorro's like the original masked hero, and wasn't one of my favorites. Like before, I was really into Batman or Spider-Man. I loved Zorro. I went as Zorro at least twice for Halloween. Huge fan of Zorro. I used to watch the '50s Zorro black and white show because it used to come on Family Channel. I watched that show all the time.
Lone Ranger.
See, I never had the opportunity to watch it back in the day. But you're right. Another one of the original masked heroes.
I didn't watch. I mean, I watched some Zorro stuff, but it wasn't the black and white.
Yeah. You can actually get a box set of that now. The black and white Zorro from the '50s that I watched. I really liked. There was there was one of the butt monkeys on the show was this big fat sergeant called Sergeant Garcia that he always used to make like a mockery of and always like carve the Z on his big fat stomach.
Yeah.
Love that.
These villains are awfully capable.
Yeah. I'm always amazed by how well these like old '30s trucks are driving through like jungle and stuff.
Yeah.
Like really?
There's like 2 gears.
Terrible tires.
Terrible everything. Terrible suspension.
And I mean, even cars up to like the '70s didn't have power steering. You ever drive a car without power steering? I have a couple times, and it is crazy. You have to be like, just to make the slightest turn. Like we're so spoiled nowadays. You're driving down the road, and you just you put barely any pressure on the wheel, and you're just tapping it barely just to even the car out. It's so beautiful. We take that for granted because power steering. Like before that, it was so hard.
You had to take the wheel and boom, 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 boom. You know.
Oh yeah, I drove like a big '70s car a couple of times, like 15 years ago. And man, it was hard. It was like the hardest thing I ever had to drive. Because it was big. It was like a big fucking boat. It was like, the same thing like Eric drove on like that '70s show.
Oh, really?
It probably wasn't the same thing, but it reminded you of that. What was it called? The Vista Cruiser? I don't think it was the same car, but it was a lot like that, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think the experience was a lot the same as driving it around.
All cars were like huge like that at one time.
Yeah. Except in the late '70s, then they started making the compact cars, but most of them were like terrible. Things like the Gremlin, which literally exploded. The Gremlin used to blow up.
And there was a few that blew up. Was it the Corvair?
There were different Pintos would blow up. Yeah.
I think that was in response to not only the gas crisis, but
I've seen this beach in other movies. Other movies have used that beach, I swear.
with the importing the Japanese cars, which were much smaller and more
and
fuel
and were
efficient.
good. And they weren't blowing up. Yeah, they were good. Because it was an answer to like the gas crisis from the late 70s, right?
Yeah.
Cars that would use gas more efficiently. I like small cars because they're easy to drive. But nowadays you've got like smart cars. I would never get on that thing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how nerve-wracking it would be to drive like a smart car out on a big highway.
You would think it'd just be like a death machine if you get into an accident.
Yeah. Anything would pancake you.
Oh man, I saw this thing the other day where they were comparing like a modern car versus a car from the 50s in a head-on collision.
Mm-hmm.
Man, like airbags and all that stuff. Like, I mean, the modern car, the guy was fine, or the dummy was fine.
Yeah.
And the 50s car, I mean, decimated. Like the entire dash pushed up, basically decapitated him or whatever.
It's another thing that I think people have taken for granted is how far cars have come along with safety too. And not to turn this into some sort of political thing about guns or anything else, but I have to say it's another situation where once again the government did step in and regulated the hell out of the industry. In the 70s, car fatalities were at an all-time high. People were getting slaughtered. And so they made all these changes, and the government told them, you have to pass all these tests and regulations, and they made it so that cars were rigorously tested before they were ever allowed to be sold. And to that day, this continues. So I just mean, it's not like it's a new thing, the idea of a government stepping into like a private industry and telling them they have to regulate things and make rules for the purposes of safety. It's an ongoing thing, but anyway, yeah.
Well, I mean, you would think, they don't make things like they used to. Now cars are all pretty much plastic, but it's all for a reason. The bumpers are plastic because they absorb shock, better than this one's solid, metal. This car is going to be fine. But the car was really not that damaged, but the person was.
Yeah.
I
hate those soccer moms and stuff that like talk about how they just want to have like the biggest SUV because they're like, if I get in an accident, I know I'm the one who's going to live. I'm like, you're one selfish piece of shit is what you are. Like, who cares? Like, if I even cause the accident, as long as I survive, just leave bodies. But ever since I saw it like introduced in 2003 in the remake of the Italian Job, I've loved the Mini Coopers. I think they're cool little cars. Maybe someday I'll own one of those. Because I like little cars because they're so maneuverable, and that was like the whole point in that movie is like showing how maneuverable these cars are, which is really cool. Like that was like the car I mostly learned to drive on was shit, what are they called? Hold on. Pontiac. It's one of the Pontiacs.
Grand Am, Sunfire.
Yes. Sunfire was a Sunfire. And I loved the Sunfire because it was really maneuverable. You could do like really good turns and stuff with it, and I could drive it backwards really well. I mean, for somebody that like, I still don't own a car, so I barely ever drive. I drive, every few months when I'm back in Sydney, driving my parents' car. I know I'm not a great driver or anything, but I mean, people are such bad drivers. It's so shocking. Like I go out on an ordinary day and I see people where literally the only thing they're good at is driving in a straight line. Even making turns is kind of difficult for them. And as far as doing things like backing up, forget it. They have no fucking clue what they're doing. I'm like, is anybody being taught this anymore? How are these people getting their licenses? They can't even back up properly. Like, holy hell.
I know. I had to take driver's ed and, pass driver's ed. And then I had to pass the driving test. The written test, then the physical, the actual driving test.
And I failed my very first attempt at the driving test. I did everything fine until the very end was I had to back into a space, and I had trouble with that, so I failed it the first time. Second time I got it.
I'm still not great at parallel parking, but I don't think they made me do it, thankfully.
I didn't have to do it for mine. If you live in a place like Sydney, you pretty much don't have to. In Halifax, you would. I can remember like the last time I parallel parked was like a long time ago. Was with my we had rented a car, my girlfriend and I, and drove to Lunenburg, which is just like about an hour outside Halifax, little seaside place. And I was looking for parking places, and she got annoyed that I wouldn't try to parallel park. And I was just like, I'd just rather avoid it. And then I wound up doing it just to prove that I could. But it was nerve-wracking because it felt like she was judging me. I was like, I bet you couldn't do it. And it was like, everybody in China is insane. They don't know to drive. I got kind of offensive there.
Right.
I was like, you come from a country of people that don't know what the hell they're doing on the road.
They're all driving bicycles.
I know. She was the one girlfriend I had that at least the one girlfriend I had experience driving with, where usually the situation is if the guy's going too fast, she's like, come on, slow down. Or she frequently wanted me to speed up. And also when she drove, I often have to tell her, you're way over the speed limit. You know this, right? Her driving wasn't terrifying, but it was still concerning. I'd be like, do you realize in the last 10 seconds, you've accelerated about 30 kilometers, which is a lot in 10 seconds on an ordinary road.
So he just gave him Bengala money.
Nice.
And he's like,
right. His name is Kit something. That's his real identity.
I've got these rubies over here.
Oh. He doesn't have any normal money, right? So this is his currency here in New York.
Got some jewels. I've got some bones over here in this pocket.
Yeah. It's funny is the last movie we did was Highlander 2. And the whole thing, remember, is Sean Connery is in Scotland and he has to get over to New York or whatever. And he has one earring or something, and it's enough for not only to get a first class ticket to go across in a plane, but he goes to this fancy clothes stuff, and they're snapping their fingers, get him the very best stuff. How is he using this one thing to get all these things?
It was a pearl or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something like a pearl in it, but it was worth so much money that just everybody basically just waited on him hand and foot and gave him whatever he wanted. I was like, well, who is he actually giving it to? Did he give it to somebody and then they just gave him thousands and thousands of dollars? I don't know. But so once again, we have one of these fish out of waters. I don't have your weird printed money. Take my precious stones.
Oh, I've got an earring, lassie.
This is the early rejected script for Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. This is all about getting skulls. Must be weird. You work for some company, and the next thing you know, the CEO takes you in and gives you a PowerPoint presentation on how it would be in the company's best interest to acquire these mystical artifacts. We can take over the world. That's good for the stock, I guess. What exactly happens when you get these mystical skulls? Oh, well, the energy of the planet aligns and we're able to control people's minds. So you can see the financial possibilities.
I've been watching this show on HBO called The Deuce. It's all about New York City in the 70s, early 80s, following prostitutes and, just how, grimy city it was.
Yeah.
But everyone is smoking all the time. And I know that's how it was, but it is so distracting for me, man. Things are so different in such a, relatively short period of time because I used to smoke, I was, a lot, and watching people smoke now is just weird. Because you don't ever see it really, Well,
it's weird seeing it in the places they do it. Because both you and I are old enough to can remember that it wasn't that long ago. When we were kids, you could smoke in all sorts of public places.
Mm-hmm. You could smoke on airplanes.
You could smoke on airplanes. Obviously, restaurants had smoking sections. Nobody cared where you smoked outside. Nobody said you had to be away from the doors or anything. You just smoke outside. But I think I told you this before. There was an episode of one of those cold case shows. I can't remember which one it was. And it was about a rather one of the only high-profile murders to happen in my hometown of Sydney. I think I told you this before.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the early 90s, and the store is still there. It's a store called Big Ben's, and it's just sort of like a convenience-style store. And it's undergone various renovations and things. Nowadays, it's sort of what you expect. You go in there, and there's the rows of stuff, and there's the fridges with the cold stuff, but there's also a section where you can make slushies or stuff. There's an ice cream case, all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the main things I've forgotten is back in 1992, I think it was the winter of 92 when the murder had happened, there a whole part of the not bottom, but when I say bottom, I mean away from where the cashier is.
Mm-hmm.
There were actually a few tables and chairs, and they were the type of chairs that you couldn't move them. They were like into the floor. And that was like an area where you could eat. And obviously you could smoke, because the whole thing was the guy who did the murder. And it's a pretty sad story too, because there was this old couple, and they were in their 70s, and they were long retired, and they were from like Ontario, and they moved to Sydney for some reason for their retirement. And they lived there for a few months, and the wife found herself really bored in retirement. So she got the job working a shift at Big Ben's just to have something to do with her time. And she was working there one night, and it was the night of this big snowstorm, and nobody was coming to the store because of the weather, but there was this one guy, and he just sat down for a long time loitering, just smoking cigarette after cigarette in that area. And I remember they were showing footage of like I was like, I remember walking in the store and it looked like that. It kind of blew my mind. But the whole thing is, at some point, not too long before she would have had to close, he just walked up to her, took out a knife, and stabbed her 1,000,000 times, and then left. And then the whole thing was like, he got away, and he wasn't caught for years and years. And what happened was, like 15 years later in Toronto, he was part of this sting operation where they were doing this whole thing where they were making it seem like they were trying to recruit him into like a high-end, criminal organization. So they rented out like this big suite in a Toronto hotel and invited him up to like pretend like they were going to invite him into it. And part of the thing was they wanted to like, we need to have dirt on people. So can you tell us something you did? And they got him to confess to the murder. So that's how they got him like many years later. He was just some drifter from Newfoundland. He just drifted around, and he was never much of a criminal, but that's how basically how they caught him. Like, he wanted to make the big leagues. He wanted to be like a big time criminal. But like to this day, there's not really any motive for the murder. Like, I think he did take some money, but there wasn't much to take. And there was no reason to stab her as savagely as he did. It was just, some really unhinged guy. But I know that's the whole thing. It's about this murder. And yet the thing that blew my mind was seeing the old footage of the store. I was like, I remember going in the store and it had the chairs, and yeah, you could smoke there. Kind of a roundabout way. But yeah, I just remember a lot of places had like little areas like that where you could smoke, and now of course they don't.
Right. I mean, people don't really smoke in Canada either, really, right? Is that right? I mean, it's not really like it was.
It's definitely not like it was. But as I've said, like, obviously Quebec, because they're French, they smoke the most, but Nova Scotia is probably the second highest. There's still quite a lot of smokers here. So I am used to seeing people smoke, but again, it's more, in the designated outside type thing. So, I mean, I'm very aware of the difference of what it was like when I was a kid and what it's like now. But definitely less people smoke now, but Nova Scotia is still quite a few smokers. And I mean, cigarettes cost a goddamn fortune, but they're hooked and they'll pay anything. Like, there's no way COVID is going to keep the smokers from getting out and getting their cigarettes. Even with that, it's worse. They'd stand in line wherever to make sure to get it. I think I told you a few times, like, so if I would go to, like, a Mooseheads game here, the World Juniors, if you go between periods, if you stepped outside, there'd be, like, hundreds of people, like, outside smoking. It'd be, like, a wall of people because they couldn't smoke inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be, like, friggin' minus 15, but they'd be out there smoking. And again, back when it was like when it was the Halifax Citadels in the AHL, you could smoke inside the building. You didn't have to go outside to smoke. But people will endure whatever weather. It's like, okay, I can't smoke in here. Fine, I'll go outside and smoke. I have to smoke, But yeah, there's definitely less people. But I mean, I still see people smoke, of course, but it's not the way it was because they can't do it anywhere inside anymore. It's pretty hilarious sometimes watching movies and stuff like that. You see people smoking in goddamn hospitals. So I missed a lot of that.
I know. Smoking in the hospital room.
Yeah, you'd have like doctors smoking while they're doing like operations.
Yeah. Ashes falling into the open torso.
Wow, one of them was green.
There's two of them.
Yeah, and there's three all told. The whole thing is to get the third. When you have the third, you get whatever the power is. But bringing two together is obviously having some sort of effect. I don't even know where the third one is at this point because I haven't paid enough attention.
Maybe the Shadow has
The Phantom?
it. I mean, the Phantom. I bet.
Yeah. Show me the power. Oh, that nice stained glass.
Oh no, that sucks.
What a waste. I love this. Holding the skulls makes glass shatter. That's so useful.
What is it?
Pointing to a map?
Is it telling us where it is?
It's pretty lucky that there's a map in this room. What would he do then? Just like point through the walls? Okay, it's on some tiny island, I guess. Looks like a map of Southeast Asia. Assuming that peninsula there is India. Yeah, I guess it's pointing to where the third is.
Yeah, I guess.
So is he their captive at this point?
I don't know. I think he's undercover.
Oh, okay, yeah. She's still captured. Look, they've got her by the arm. Yeah, I think they're both captured. Although I don't think they know he's the Phantom. I think he's captured undercover.
Okay.
I love those hood ornaments in that car. It's pretty cool. This guy's following them. I don't know why. Does he work with? I think he worked with the Phantom.
It's like an awkward placement of a license plate.
Yeah. That's another thing that like a lot of the pulp heroes and actually Moon Knight shares. I wonder if the nod to it is that a lot of these pulp heroes, not only do they have sidekicks, but they usually have several like assistants that work for them that do various jobs, sometimes just providing information or stuff like that. Like, and Moon Knight takes that a step further also by having like other identities. Like one of Moon Knight's alternate personalities is Jake Lockley, who is a cab driver in New York, and that's one of the ways he gets like information and stuff is he just drives a cab around and picks up criminals. But he also has this whole network. There's like through that identity, he knows like this woman who works at a diner, and eventually, and she's got these two teenage sons, and he gets them to be helpers for him and stuff. And that seems to come from a lot of these pulp type heroes have the same sort of thing going on because they've almost all got like a sidekick and then maybe even other assistants that help them throughout the city. Pinstripe suit. Yeah, so Quill's like his main enforcer guy. Pretty fake looking backdrop, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's like a matte painting or something, right?
Probably. I mean, it's hard recreating 1930s New York. That's one of the things I really like about even though it's only for a small bit near the oh no, then it shows up again later. Is I always thought the 2005 King Kong remake was a pretty underrated movie, and it really looks good. Like because that's like 1933 New York, and it looks really good. The sets they use, and I guess models, and probably some CG and stuff too. I haven't seen that in a long time, but that's a really good adventure movie. It's a bit long, but it's good. Interesting role for Jack Black. And it's funny, again, speaking of like 30s pulp, that's basically what those two Jumanji movies are. Yeah. Like that's what that video game is basically set in that world of like basically 1930s adventure. And I just watched the second one. It was okay, I guess.
You mean the new Jumanji movies?
Yeah. Yeah, with like The Rock and stuff. Yeah. Because that's what the video game is. It's basically set in that sort of aesthetic, like 1930s adventure. Again, pulp, very pulp. Well, he got away and got his costume on. So here's one of the problems with a guy like this is that he never really had a definitive villain to fight. He just, sort of fought a bunch of like guys like whoever the bad guy is in this. Not somebody else in a costume. That's a charming name.
Oh. Chaz Palminteri?
Oh, I don't know.
Or
you know more actors than I do. That one's beyond me. Don't know the name or who he looks like.
Yeah. No, not Chaz Palminteri. I can't think of his name.
It's a distinctive name, but I don't recognize it.
He was in the remake of Diabolique.
Didn't see it. Bermuda Triangle's got nothing on the Devil's Vortex.
Apparently there was a miniseries in 2009 called The Phantom.
Wow. Don't remember that at all. Live action?
I believe so.
Oh, Patrick McGowan was... Oh, he was in the flashback. He was the Phantom's father. He was the guy that gets killed at the start. Samantha Edgar.
Yeah, it was live action.
The film features several elements from Lee Falk's first two Phantom stories from 1936 daily newspaper strips, The Sing Brotherhood and The Sky Band. Several characters in the film derived from these stories. Kabai Seng, leader of the Seng Brotherhood. The name was changed from Seng to the movie to avoid offending people named Singh. Sala, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, leader of the Sky Band, a group of female air pirates, and Jimmy Wells, a wealthy playboy. The more realistic plots of Falk's original stories were dropped in favor of an adventure tale that featured the supernatural skulls of Tuganda. Falk's story, The Belt, where the Phantom fights the killer of his father, was also a major influence on the story. The name of the murderer was changed from Rama to Quill, and the 20th Phantom, played by Patrick McGowan, is portrayed as a much older man in the film than in the comic strip. Okay, so there is some stuff in there. That's funny. These are the ones I mentioned. The film suffered the same fate as two other period piece comic book pulp adaptations of the 90s, The Shadow and The Rocketeer. Yeah, I mean, I guess I know The Rocketeer definitely wasn't that successful. I don't know if it was a big flop. I know The Shadow was, and The Phantom absolutely was.
I mean, The Rocketeer is clearly the best of the three.
Yeah, clearly.
I mean, it's still a good movie. I watched it like a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus for those who are interested.
There was a good friend of mine's dad was a huge fan of that movie. It was always on at their house.
Huh. Yeah, that's one I saw pretty early on. I didn't see it in theater. I was too young, but again, I think it was an early movie that might showed on Family Channel. Oh, we got the chase through the streets.
They may have shown it on the Disney Channel and he recorded it or something. Something like that. Well, anyway, he had a copy of it one way or another. But,
I might have even rented the VHS.
Which is why I guess in my mind it was a little more popular than it actually was. Just because we watched it all the time.
I think when I was in... it's hard to... I might be mixing it up with something because I don't really remember when the movie was released in 1991. Because 91 was the last time I was in Florida and Disney World and Universal Studios. I think either it had just come out or was about to come out, and they had like some sort of feature about it in Universal Studios, maybe, of The Rocketeer. But I might be not remembering that correctly. I might just be mixing that up with something like that. Hopelessly outdated. As the Phantom, Billy Zane, buff to the max, has likable insouciance. But there's not much he can do flesh out on this relic. With its generic stunts and chases, its hand-me-down cheeseball mysticism, the plot hinges on a hunt for magic skulls. Haha. Don't worry, that'll be a good plot again in 2008 or whatever. The film, while crisply shot, has even less personality than such Crusader retreads as The Rocketeer and The Shadow.
I mean, I feel like the cheesiness aspect of it was intentional.
I think so. Billy Zane originally signed up to do 2 sequels, which of course wound up not being made. In 2008, Paramount Pictures was considering creating a sequel with Zane and Swanson and Zeta-Jones all returning to their roles. It's now instead that a reboot of the Phantom series was in the works called The Phantom Legacy, produced. Sam Worthington was being considered for the lead role. By 2014, this had fallen through. But there's still a possibility of some sort of Phantom reboot coming at some time or another. But yeah, the Blu-ray release was 2010 by Lionsgate.
I mean, Joe Johnston did The Rocketeer.
Yep.
And I mean, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was his first directing role.
Now that they did have some stuff of at Universal Studios or whatever like that. They showed how like they did the scene with them flying on the bee and stuff. I remember that really well.
Jumanji, October Sky, Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah.
The Wolfman.
I still kind of like the 2010 Wolfman. It's not good, but there's just not very many good werewolf movies, as we've said many times.
Oh. And
right, so this cabbie is just helping him because he gave him some jewels, I guess.
Probably my favorite is Captain America: The First Avenger.
Oh yeah, he directed that. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely one of the best Marvel movies. I like all the Captain America movies. They're my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
The second one's my favorite. Winter Soldier is my favorite. I think that's by those brothers. Who are they? Anyway, whoever they are, the 2 brothers, they did it.
The Wachowski. Wow.
No, not the Wachowskis.
Wachowskis.
No, not them. Although we'll have to do something from their oeuvre sooner or later. Instead, I'd like to do
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas, which I actually own.
Let's do it, because I haven't seen it before, and I'd like to watch it. It's
a bit long, but I mean, it has a lot of stuff going on, so I don't think it'll really feel long. Because it's bouncing between timelines, right? It's the whole thing. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's really good. I really need to read the book. I've read pieces of the book in the store. I'd like to own the book. It's a really cool book. It's the type of book I would like to write.
We could talk about how it needs to be canceled.
Well, yeah, because the whole thing is, yeah, you've got some actors playing characters of different races at points. The whole point is that the story is supposed to hinge on the idea of like reincarnation. So you've got the same actors playing various characters, and the point is maybe supposed to be, their later reincarnated version. So that's why that's there. Like you don't have anybody in blackface or anything like that, but you do have like a couple times. I think you'll have like a Caucasian playing like an Asian, which I realize there shouldn't be different rules for it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like if you're going to do it, it has to be across the board.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfortunate because, I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of times it's not intentionally, with a negative, intention.
Yeah. I think intention does matter. I'm not saying it always gives you a free pass, but as I said, it wasn't too long ago when Tina Fey released that statement when they, removed some of the episodes of 30 Rock that had it in it. And she said, I now realize, intent doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't? I think it does. And I remember how those scenes went. And I mean, I don't want to be the white guy saying, if you're black and offended, like, what are you doing? Because I realize it's not my place to tell people how to feel. I'm simply saying the context that it's used in was never like, hey, look, somebody's in blackface. That's hilarious. Like, no, it was usually the whole point was they were like pointing out that it was wrong and bad, and they were trying to stop it.
Right.
They were trying to point out like sometimes how ignorant some of the characters could be, or how self-absorbed that they didn't realize what they were doing. Was really the intent, and now they're just like, well, we realize that's not good enough. I don't know. I think it is, if done properly.
Yeah.
And I also understand that there is one of the reasons why, like, it's more, say, offensive, the idea of, say, like, putting blackface in a movie as opposed to, say, yellow face or whatever you want to call it, is that blackface has a real history. You have, like, it actually being used that way, right? Like, there was a time when they did have white people put on blackface, and sort of the point was to deliberately to, like, mock black people. I get that.
Sure.
Right. It wasn't like to do a legitimate portrayal of them. It was like to caricature them and make fun of them. So I get that. Yes. Like, it actually has a real history with bad intent attached to it. So anyway. Okay. So all our heroes and villains have converged on the secret island here. The Phantom is free, but she is not. She's still their captive. I don't remember why she's even valuable to them, but
something I'm intended on mentioning during our show the other night about Apocalypto. That's another one on the 1001 films to see before you die.
I can understand why, because it's really unique. You know, there's not really another film like it, just because of its setting and subject matter. So I can understand its placement, because, like, it's really in sort of a category by itself. I mean, genre-wise, no, but as far as content and setting, yes. There's just not movies that focus on that part of the world or those people.
Yeah, I would say about a third of the movies we've done are on that list.
Yeah, because we try to do movies that stand out as unique or compelling or powerful in some way. For the most part, we're trying to cover movies that we think, you know, deserve attention and should be seen, even if they're not always super great. Okay, pirates. Okay. Pirates have been lying in wait for them. But yeah, see, stuff like this it's deliberately cheesy because it's supposed to capture that pulp feel.
Right. That's why, of course, it's cheesy. It's supposed to be.
And I mean, I understand the differences in quality. This does not in any way measure up to, say, an Indiana Jones film. But I mean, I don't blame Zane, but the hero himself is just so bland, right? Like, okay, here's the Sang Brotherhood. So they're the ones that have that tattoo of the web. So now the main bad guy is actually captured by them. So that's an interesting twist, I guess. So yeah, it was like a leader of the Sang Brotherhood that killed his father, the Phantom, before him.
We are members too.
Right. So I guess the thing is, the bad guy there, Treat Williams, he hired Quill, but to like work for him, but Quill's actually part of this brotherhood. Watch out, Cat.
I guess if you get it on your face, it's really not a secret brotherhood.
I know, he's got it like right here. This is the part of the movie I remember best. I forgot most of the rest. I remember sort of the beginning and this. The middle stuff I could not remember at all because it's not that memorable. Okay, secret lair in a cave. There's the last skull, which is gold. There's our bad guy, Fu Manchu style. Speaking of racial caricatures from the pulp era, that was another big one, right? The yellow menace, you know, the evil Chinese, Fu Manchu being the main one. And even modern day characters derive from that, because that's basically what the Mandarin in Marvel was. He was basically a Marvel take on Fu Manchu, who they didn't have the rights to. For a while, they did have the rights to it, because the idea is, actually this February, they're going to release, which I'm really looking forward to, they're going to release a movie based on Shang-Chi, the Master of Kung Fu. And in the original version of Shang-Chi's origin, like, his father was Fu Manchu, but they had to change it. So now his father is just some other evil guy who's like Fu Manchu, because they didn't have the rights anymore. But I can't even remember what his father's name is in current continuity, but yeah. But anyway, I always loved that character.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, yes, he was part of the whole 70s wave, just like the other one, Luke Cage, because Luke Cage was based on like the 70s ways of black exploitation, and a guy like Shang-Chi was based on the whole kung fu exploitation of the 70s, but they still were really good characters. Iron Fist to a certain extent too, although he was a white guy. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that movie. I've always been a fan of that character.
Wasn't Iron Fist black in the show?
No.
He was white? Okay, I didn't watch all of that stuff. I watched the Luke Cage stuff, but I didn't watch his.
That one gets picked on. I still thought it was pretty good. You could tell it was rushed, which is too bad, but
they may have had to rush it because that's when Disney didn't renew their contract or whatever with Netflix.
I mean, I wasn't super thrilled with their interpretation of the guy, but it was okay. I mean, they did create their own dynamic, and I have to say, in season 2 of the Luke Cage show, episode 10, they almost do like a crossover where he and Danny are together, and it's not perfect or anything, but I mean, it's as close as you're going to get to seeing that cool camaraderie and friendship they have in the comics. So that's actually one of my favorite episodes of anything. I love that episode. It's a slightly different dynamic because they made it so that Luke Cage, what's that guy's name? Michael. I can't remember the actor's name, but anyway, that actor. He's about 40 or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they made the dynamic different because they made Danny a lot younger. So they made it more, he's kind of like a big brother mentor type thing. Whereas in the comic, they're kind of roughly close in age. They might not be the same age, but whoever's older or younger, it's not like a big gulf. Whereas they made a different dynamic in the show by how they cast it. But I didn't mind because it was kind of interesting what they did.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a great moment in the Defenders show, because of course the Defenders show is when all Daredevil and Jessica Jones and everybody comes together. When Luke had first met Danny, where there's a part where he was mad because Danny was chasing after these guys that who had been hired to clean up a crime scene. They weren't the actual bad guys, but they were hired by the bad guys to clean it up, and they were just sort of local kids, and they were black, and a couple of them were actually known to Luke Cage from his neighborhood. So he was mad that so he caught Danny roughing one of them up for answers, and he got really mad, of course, and he wanted him to check his white privilege and stuff because he knew he was a billionaire and all this stuff. And you're just thinking, it's funny how misinformed Luke actually is, because while it's true that Danny is an affluent, super privileged white guy billionaire, most of his life was nothing like that. In fact, it was a lot worse than Luke's or any of these street kids, in that he literally grew up in a monastery as a monk, living as a monk with no possessions, and he lived in a room with a single cot. And his whole life was basically child abuse because of how harsh the training and stuff was. So it's kind of just an ironic moment because, obviously Luke doesn't know any of that. And he's right. He is technically a billionaire and all this, but he doesn't actually know that most 10 years of his life was more sparse and has less to do with money or privilege than anything you could imagine. But I know I've blabbed about this before. That's my favorite friendship in comics. I love. And what's funny is, again, it's just completely random, I think. They were just two 70s books that were basically failing. So they were like, hey, why not combine them? I don't know. Maybe it'll work. It's one's a street smart, jive-talking guy with an afro, and one's our kung fu guy from a mystical city. And it just happened. It's just one of those things that happened to work, and I've always really liked it. It's also one of the earliest runs by a female writer that was really good. Mary Jo Duffy did a lot of the writing for Luke Cage and Power Man and Iron Fist in the early 80s, and it's really good stuff. I own it just in the essential form, which is just the cheap black and white, but I'd like to get a better collection of it. But yeah, Mary Jo Duffy being sort of one of the pioneers, I guess, of a woman in the comics industry. Really great writer.
Dual wielding.
Saw the pistols, yeah. Yeah, that was always part of him. In the comics, he would do that. Again, he was a lot of pulp heroes. He wasn't necessarily killing guys left and right, but he would use guns if the opportunity came.
I've always liked that, John Woo style.
Yeah. Nobody did it better than John Woo, that's for sure. That's another movie that drives me nuts that I can't find anywhere. It's his first one, A Better Tomorrow.
That was the first one? Okay.
I got so excited when I thought I bought it. I literally was so excited I didn't even really look at it hard enough. I actually bought a Korean remake of A Better Tomorrow a few years ago, which I own. Yeah.
I wouldn't even want to watch that.
I did watch it. It was fine, but, definitely not the original.
I think they made a sequel to A Better Tomorrow, didn't they?
Yep, and he came back and directed again. In fact, in a way, even though A Better Tomorrow was the one that started the whole gun fu thing, A Better Tomorrow 2 is sort of the one that cemented it. Because he was annoyed that the first one had done so well, because he didn't think it was particularly good. And when they did the second one, he said, I know, I'll turn it up even more. It'll even be more gun crazy and stuff. And then it was even more successful because people liked it so much. Like, he literally was trying to, like, make kind of a mockery of it, and all it did was make it more popular.
I got really into that stuff at one point, and I watched them all, like, right, in a row. So I kind of get them confused because John Woo, like The Killers, that's John Woo too, right?
The Killer, yeah.
The Killer.
And Hard Boiled.
Hard Boiled, yeah, that's a good one.
I own those on a Blu-ray 2-pack, but I also own Hard Boiled just separately on DVD. Hard Boiled is my personal favorite.
Is Chow Yun-fat in all those?
Or Fox? He's in I think at least the first A Better Tomorrow. He's the main guy in The Killer. And yeah, he's one of the two guys. He's one of the two main guys in Hard Boiled.
That's why it's easy to get him confused because same actor and same director.
Right. I can't believe how fucking rich Chow Yun-fat was, or maybe still is.
Yeah, you told me about that.
He had over $800 million.
Where did he get it again? Just from the movies?
Well, I mean, I guess it's mostly the movies, because before he became a movie star, he was a big soap opera star. And I don't know how much that gets you money, but in the early to mid 80s, he was one of the biggest soap opera stars in China.
Well, he was like the biggest star in China, right, at one time.
Yeah. Like, it was always him and Jackie Chan.
I mean, like take like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and whoever else, like, combined,
Pretty much, because he had more money than any of them.
Right.
Which is, again, not something I really realized until I happened upon it a few years ago. And the whole thing was Chow Yun-fat. At that time, he said he was giving his fortune away. So I guess, I know you can't do that all at once, but he must be in the process of doing it, of just giving his fortune away to charities or whatever it is. Because, you look up somebody like, I don't know, Al Pacino or something. They've got millions of dollars, but they don't have 800 million. Like, holy hell.
Assuming you're making $20 million a picture, which is still an awful lot of money for an actor to make.
Yeah.
You're not going to make that many movies getting paid that kind of money.
Mm-hmm. I really like the Spielberg approach where, like, he signs up big actors and they don't even get salaries. It's basically you just get paid based on how well the movie does, but you don't actually have a salary. That's how he gets big stars in his movies. Which I think is nice, because think about how many shitty movies, like, there are that did nothing, but the actor still made so much money. Like, John Travolta made like $15 million. That was his, no matter what. And the movie was Lucky Numbers, which is like one of the biggest like tank jobs in the history of film.
I haven't seen it.
What's another one? And of course, what's funny is the movie that set the benchmark. The first actor to ever make $20 million was Jim Carrey, and that was with. I originally thought it was to play the Riddler in Batman Forever, but then I read it was actually the 20 million was for the Cable Guy, and the Cable Guy was a flop too.
Yeah, I don't care for that movie.
Yeah, that's one of those movies that's been like reassessed over the years, and people say it's actually pretty good, but I don't like it either. It just has this undercurrent of being really uncomfortable, which is another reason why I think it flopped, because people were used to him being zany and weird, but they weren't used to him being like creepy and off-putting.
Yeah.
That movie's like a who's who of like 90s comedians. It's like Garofalo's in there, and Jack Black is his friend. The guy he beats up in the bathroom is Wilson. What's his name? Owen Wilson. But yeah, I've watched that movie plenty of times over the years, and I still don't think it's very good. But that's actually one of those movies that's been reassessed, and a lot of people say it was actually really good and unappreciated and misunderstood. Like, I don't think it was a horrible movie. I just don't think it was very good.
It definitely has an audience, or has following.
Yeah. I've missed a lot of what's happening here. Fourth skull? I thought there only were 3. Okay, so there is a fourth skull. Or maybe he's lying about there being a fourth skull. I think you're bluffing. Oh, he's trying to make it sound like he is immortal and he's always been the same guy. I'm gonna melt you with these skulls and its weird green ecto ray. Oh, yeah. So the ring does have some power because. Oh, look, it's like Wizards of the Lost Kingdom.
It's like
now that is a deep cut. Heart.
Yeah, what the fuck is heart?
I think it like let him like control animals.
That's not what.
It was definitely the lamest of the powers. I mean, other people can conjure fire and wind and water. Heart. Wow, thanks.
I've got the ability to love everybody.
Pretty much. Oh, okay, that was a crappy effect.
So in the entire movie, that's his only power was the ring, right?
Yeah, the rest is, he's just badass normal. Fighting and shooting and riding and stuff. Again, par for the course with the pulp because, until Superman came along in 38, there weren't people with powers.
Right. So that's the first thing that's like not a set in this movie.
Yeah. It's a very small submarine. I mean, this isn't that bad, really. It's better than The Shadow. So what? Since Catherine Zeta-Jones is so pretty, we're just going to pretend she's not a bad guy. It's like, oh, you're a good guy now, I guess. After all, you're a girl. Oh, shit, there goes my camera again. Damn.
Yeah, is this pre-Michael Douglas?
I don't know when that started. I think so.
I guess you're going to hitch your wagon to somebody. It's not a bad choice.
Yeah. Damn, wrong camera. Stupid thing. Alright, so now they're back at his lair. Okay, and he's telling her the whole story about how Phantom's passed down. He's the 21st Phantom.
It seems awfully late in the movie to be explaining all this. We've already had the climax, right?
Yeah. They made a Phantom 2040 video game, too, that I rented that was actually really enjoyable for Super Nintendo. I think for Genesis, too.
Really?
It was cool because it was one of those movies where you used a lot of different gadgets, and they have a lot of really interesting effects. It was actually a pretty good game, as I recall. Wish I could play it again. There's his father.
20 Phantoms, so they were all his relatives, right? All his...
Yeah, his father and father before him and stuff, yeah. Come on, she just gave you an opening. She's like, well, then you need to make another Phantom, don't you? Be quiet, Haji. What's up, Turban Boy? Goodbye, Devil. I mean, if I had to rank them, the Rocketeer's the best one. This one's not terrible. It's not good. The Shadow's absolutely terrible.
Oh, that's his dad?
Yeah. I don't know if he's dead or that's his ghost or what. I don't know if they make it clear. I mean, he's
well, he didn't seem surprised to see him, so he's like, hey, Dad.
Yeah. I'm sure there's other movies that have used this beach. Oh, we're friends now, yeah.
Yeah.
I was an air pirate, and I worked for the bad guy and pointed guns at people, but now I'm a good guy.
We spent 5 minutes in that sub together, and we're best friends.
Catherine Zeta-Jones. Isn't she, like, Welsh or something?
I'm not sure.
She plays a pretty good Mexican.
I mean, I don't know where the dark skin comes from.
Yeah. I like absolutely. My favorite thing for her is definitely the Zorro movie.
Okay.
You know, you think, oh, that role will be Selma Hayek. Yeah, let's go with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Lassie.
What, the Phantom actually marries people? Good logic there. What was I watching? Oh, yeah, I was rewatching the first season of The Boys.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a part where and there's a whole bunch of stuff I'd forgotten about. But there's that minor character, Popclaw, who's the one that A-Train was dating. A-Train's the speedster, and he was dating Popclaw. And they show that, you know, since they're all, even though they're heroes, they do a lot of, like, bullshit, like, publicity and stuff like that, right? So there's at one point they're showing, like, one of her either movies or TV shows. They're watching a DVD of it. And she's, like, you know, roughing up some guy in an alley, and it's Billy Zane.
She died, right? Popclaw.
Yeah, spoilers, A-Train eventually kills her because she became a liability because she blabbed about the Compound V. He smuggled her away to Cuba, saying, oh, we have to go into hiding and stuff, and then he used his speed to inject her with a bunch of heroin to make it look like a heroin overdose.
That's right.
Yeah. A-Train's a really shitty guy, but I mean, that's the whole point. It's like almost all of them are terrible, terrible people, though they were also raised sort of to be, too. It's interesting. Definitely looking forward to it. I was all set for the second season, and then I realized that all that actually came out is the trailer. The second season doesn't start till September 4th, but I've rewatched most of the first season now, and stuff's come back to me.
I may do this stuff. Because you told me it was out, and I was like, oh, shit, I need to go watch that, and I hadn't gotten to it yet.
No, you got plenty of time. You got plenty of time to catch up. Because that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, oh, I'm really excited about the second season, but I forget so much. I have to watch it again. And then,
what's the main Superman guy in the show?
Homelander.
And he's like the worst of the bunch.
Oh, yeah. He's like blasting people apart with his eye beams left and right. And the whole, like, you know, backstory is like that he raped Butcher's wife 8 years ago, and that's the whole reason Butcher is on this whole thing. And then she disappeared right after, so he thinks, you know, either he killed her or she, you know, killed herself. James Remar. I get why this movie flopped, but it's not terrible. Just sort of a forgettable, bland hero. I don't really blame Billy Zane. He didn't have much to work with.
No, I don't think he's the problem with the film.
No, and that's why I think it's unfortunate, because I think it definitely had an effect on his career trajectory. It's like, no leading man stuff for you, Billy Zane. You can just continue to be like maybe a bad guy, a supporting person. Mm-hmm. And he's done well with that. Although I think his career's kind of ground to a halt lately.
I watched a movie called like The Roommate or some shit. It's just about this crazy this girl has a crazy roommate in college, and Billy Zane is one of the professors that wants to sleep with all these girls.
Man, he's in Critters.
Yes.
I mean, he did a fair amount of voice work too, which is one of the things that had sort of kept him somewhat relevant, I guess, is doing some voice work, although not really on any high-profile stuff. Like he was a voice in like a sequel to Pocahontas. And I mean, you want to look at his 2000s outfit, it's awful. Like, he's in Blood Rain.
Oh, man. The first one?
Yeah. Like, his 2000s output is, like, mostly movies I've never heard of, or movies that I've heard of because they're completely terrible like that.
In 89, he was in Dead Calm and Back to the Future 2.
Dead Calm. So, I'm looking at his 2000 movies, and I haven't heard of, like, 90% of them. Like the most high profile thing he did was like Zoolander 2, where once again he played himself, just like in the first one. I mean, he still continues to do stuff. He's going to be in an upcoming movie called Waltzing with Brando, where he plays Marlon Brando. I mean, yeah, somebody I've liked like for 20 years. He hasn't been in anything any good. He was in The Believer, and I don't even remember him in that. That's all the way back in 2001. Like, I haven't not heard of most of these. And then there's things like Blue Seduction, which comes on TV every once in a while, which is just about some woman he's like a rock star and she gets obsessed with him or something. And there's The Roommate, 2010. But yeah, 20 years of nothing. Although I guess TV counts too. Don't recognize most of the TV either. Even an episode of Community? I don't remember that. One of the late ones, 2015. But yeah, that like cameo in The Boys. This is like the last TV thing he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what I remember is he's the voice of Ansem in Kingdom Hearts. That's the bad guy in the original Kingdom Hearts, and he does a really good job of in there. Yeah, he's in a few music videos, including The Dope Show by Marilyn Manson. We're all stars now in The Dope Show.
That was a good one.
I bet he's friends with Marilyn Manson. They seem like people that would be friends.
Yeah, I bet he's a really eccentric guy.
It's 54. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like this movie, I think this movie definitely derailed his career, or not derailed it, but maybe halted it, his momentum. So yeah, like you want to name something he was in where he was good and important, like it's like pretty much before this movie, and that's a long time ago now. Like I guess a lot of people remember him Titanic. I mean I remember him, but it's not that important.
Lisa Zane is his older sister.
Oh, she's older? I knew they were they're brother and sister. I didn't realize she was older. They're in something together, aren't they? Isn't there some movie that they're both in? I feel like there's some movie they're both in. I know she's like the one in Freddy's Dead.
Not that I can see right off, but I'm sure there is.
Oh, she's in Monkey Bone. Speaking of like weird flops.
Speaking of Brendan Fraser.
Yeah. I kind of like Monkey Bone. It's another one of the ones where I totally get why it flopped, but there's still things I like about it. And, you know, it's funny, we were talking about, you know, how this movie fits into that whole thing in the 90s of some of these, like, failed 30s era pulp heroes. Monkey Bone also fits into its own little thing where, like, you can put it in the same category as something like Cool World, where it's, like, you know, dark, weird, animated or semi-animated, but adult stuff that, you know, just didn't land. The story about Cool World's pretty interesting. You want to talk about executive meddling. Again, that was so different from what Ralph Bakshi originally intended, Cool World. And they just changed it completely. So that's another one of those movies where I really like the concept, just the execution's not good. So anyway, that was The Phantom. I guess we didn't talk that much about it. There were times when we got distracted and I missed what was going on in the movie, but I don't know. I'm still glad we did it.
Yeah, I was just looking at Billy Zane's stuff here.
Yeah. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's, you know, a really average movie. I wouldn't say it's poor. There's way worse stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And for a direct comparison, I would say The Shadow. The Shadow is laughably bad. I wish we could find it because I think that would be fun to ridicule. This movie wasn't as goofy as you're really expecting it to be, maybe. This is what I hate about stupid Prime is I'll put movies on my watch list, but even when they become unavailable, like they don't disappear. So like I've got like the cook, the thief, his wife and her lover or whatever, which I've always wanted to see, and I think at one point was on there, but right now it just says currently unavailable. Well, thanks. Oh, there's another one. I had to enter the void on here, and it's currently unavailable. So that's annoying. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff on my watch list that I'd rather they just if it's gone, just take it off. Then don't make me think, oh, I'm gonna watch it, and then it's gone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, why is it? It's just like you can't even rent it.
Yeah, some of them, yeah, because some of them you can rent it. And it'll be like it's available because the whole thing about Prime, right, is they show all these other channels, you know. Because sometimes they're like, yeah, this is on Sunset or whatever. I'm like, well, that's not helpful. But some of them are just completely unavailable. It's like currently unavailable. There's the 2003 Old Boy, currently unavailable. Jesus Christ.
We need to do that.
Well, the good news is I do have access to the other one, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Okay.
And I actually own it too. So I've got a DVD of it that I haven't even looked at yet. So I assume the DVD works. I probably should have checked. Because it was a used one. It wasn't. I didn't buy it new. I bought it used at some like curiosity store back in Sydney that sells records and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I got it for like $4, so pretty good.
It's not bad.
Well, that was The Phantom, 1996, Billy Zane. But yeah, I'm kind of curious about The Phantom 2040 now, which is weird because when I was looking up on Wikipedia stuff about The Phantom, it didn't mention the show at all.
Yeah, I mean, it was a show.
Yeah, I didn't make that up. It's just called Phantom 2040, not The Phantom. Yeah, see, yeah, I did see Phantom 2040 before the movie because the show ran from 94 to 96. But it's one of those. It's a partially French show. It was a French-American production, and I'm probably based on the art style. I definitely have seen another couple cartoons that were made by that, and for only 35 episodes. And I can't remember any of the plots, but it was odd because it was. The character designs are distinct to the work of Peter Chung, creator of EM Flux. So yeah, there's your connection there. Along with Andrea Romano's equally pioneering work on Batman the Animated Series, Stuart M. Rosen's voice direction of Phantom 2040 had a lasting impact in animated adventure television. The cast accomplished dramatic actors and introduced a new level of maturity. And okay, let's see who some of these actors are then. Margot Kidder, Ron Perlman, Leah Remini. Wow, I would have had no idea who she was back then.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hamill was on the show. Rob Paulson, Debbie Harry. Interesting.
This was all on the TV show?
Yeah, the 2040 one, the futuristic one.
Wow.
But yeah, I definitely used to watch it. Again, not because I was a fan, but it was more just, it was something different, and I was trying to take advantage of, like, it was a cartoon that, like, most other people I knew couldn't watch because they didn't have the channel. It was on WSBK at the time, which is good for a few other cartoons because that's how I watched the 90s Mega Man cartoon, too. It was on that, which was a pretty good show. Like, they got more out of it than you would expect of something with such a simple plot as Mega Man. It's like, oh, there's evil robots, you gotta fight them. Probably the weird thing about that Mega Man show is how, like, you know, different shows would feature different, you know, bad guys from the series, but Gutsman and Cutsman, who, you know, were both in Mega Man 1, they were kind of like always recurring guys, and they were sort of like recurring, like just comedic characters. They were just sort of there to like fuck up and stuff. It was weird. Oh my god, this camera is killing me.
Oh man,
I'm gonna have to retire it. It's not gonna make us through an actual show of Movie Discussion Pocket Dimension.
It made it through the other night, thankfully.
It's so fussy about getting knocked off. Dark cam. Go again. Wasn't even typing anything. I was just looking at the Wikipedia page. Anyway, I don't know how much time you have. I don't want to keep you.
I'm not really in a hurry or anything.
I could even do a second movie.
I don't think I've got that in me.
That's fine. I'm just looking at some stuff here. I know there's a couple things that we're considering for the near future. Like we did Highlander 2, so maybe we'll do the first Highlander. And we did Police Story, so maybe Police Story 2. I'm looking at stuff on Prime here. There's a few things that, oh yeah, I thought were just fun, like The Running Man. Because we actually haven't, I don't think, done a Schwarzenegger movie for one of these yet. It seems like you have to do Schwarzenegger sooner or later.
Judge Dredd. Let's do Judge Dredd.
I wouldn't mind doing Judge Dredd, I guess. You betrayed the law.
The law!
And then we can do a whole bunch of Rob Schneider movies. Not really. I couldn't survive that.
We could do Judge Dredd and Demolition Man back to back.
Yeah.
I actually like Demolition Man.
Demolition Man has a lot going for it. I mean, yes, it's silly and stuff, but I mean, it still has good action. And as a lot of people pointed out, it makes some good sort of predictions about like society. Maybe a little over the top, but you know. It's not a movie that takes itself that seriously, so I don't think you can judge it that harshly, right?
Did you ever finish watching that Watchmen show?
No, I don't know if I have this. That's something I have the strength for, because I really strongly disliked it. I watched maybe 5 episodes, and I kind of hated every minute of it. I didn't like anything. I couldn't point to anything that I liked. I thought it was all stupid. The more I found out, the more it went on, the more I disliked it. I just did not like anything about it. Man, half the stuff on my watch list isn't available anymore. That's so annoying. Like when I found out we were thinking about maybe doing Babel. Babel's gone. I mean, even if we didn't do it, I would have liked to have just watched it, but no.
That's the thing about Prime. Things come and go pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I like Prime, and it definitely has a lot of good options, but yeah, you can't put off stuff for too long or it'll disappear. At least with Netflix, for some of the stuff, and not everything, you do get like more, and you can like look up on lists, and they'll say, "Here's what's coming in this month and going off and stuff." Although it still doesn't cover everything, because I guess there's no way it could.
Yeah, my Prime, I don't know. I guess the way they do it is they just don't license things for very long, but they have a really good selection of like older movies that were really hard to come by at one time.
Yeah,
like Evil Ed is on there.
Well, that's why I was so pleased when I first saw that the thief, his wife, the cover, whatever it's called, was on there. Like I should have watched it when I had the chance, because that's an obscure movie.
Which one was it?
It's like the thief, the cook, his wife, and her lover, or something. It's a somewhat infamous movie for some of its content, so I've always been interested in it. It's from like '89 or something.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
But there's some David Lynch has been added also to my Netflix lately, so I want to take advantage of that. I definitely want to watch Lost Highway.
Let's see if I've got access to that.
I'm looking at my Netflix now. That's so much stuff on here.
I'd like to do Lost Highway.
I definitely want to watch it. I can't remember it well enough to say whether it's worth covering. I mean, it pretty much anything Lynch did will have enough to it to make it worth covering, I suppose, just because by virtue of being a David Lynch movie. The one we did so far is my favorite one, which is
Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive, yeah. Mulholland Drive is always my favorite David Lynch movie. Although there's about 2 or 3 I haven't seen, although I doubt they would push it out of.
I like Blue Velvet a lot.
Yeah, I like Blue Velvet quite a lot.
I don't think it's Not on American
The
Netflix.
Blue Velvet doesn't seem to be on here. They added some David Lynch, but not all. What I noticed was that Lost Highway and Fire Walk with Me are definitely on here. That might be it, though, because, I mean, another one I haven't seen in a long time that I really want to see, oh, my God, is Wild at Heart.
I haven't seen Wild at Heart in a while either.
Which is like one of the more... Because it's funny, sometimes when you think about Nick Cage and everybody talks about how crazy he is and all the stuff he's done, it's like, it's easy to forget, like, he did crazy stuff even before he became a big A-list actor. And that's a great example of it, the character he plays in that. He's so nuts. He was like one of my favorite monologues in any movie when he's blabbing about his snakeskin jacket. Oh my God, it's funny.
Yeah, Nick Cage is, I mean, he's a good actor when he wants to be.
Oh, yeah. It's so hard to compare anybody's career to him when you compare like quality stuff with bad stuff and with stuff that's in between, and then stuff that's crazy but also good, and then crazy but also bad. I mean,
Yeah.
who covers all those bases more than Nick Cage? And as I said many times, because of the way he bankrupted himself, how he just has to keep making movie after movie after movie. So he's in just so many things. Like how many movies was he in like 2017? Like 15 movies. Like, it feels that way.
I think he's going to play the Tiger King, isn't he?
Makes sense. Holy shit, it just started pouring out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, you go from The Rock, which is a pretty solid movie, and you do Con Air, which is just batshit crazy, and you do Snake Eyes, you know?
Which is an awful movie. I've heard people like try to defend that movie. That movie's...
I mean, I like it for what it is. I don't think it's a good movie or anything, but
I don't like it at all.
I
like
Face Off is a fucking masterpiece. I'll argue.
I agree. I mean, I think that shows that, like, what's his name? John Woo did some really good American movies too, and Face Off is the top of the list. As I said, it's not a masterpiece, but I always will really feel fondly about the John Travolta one, Broken Arrow. There was a time in my life where Broken Arrow probably held the record for the most times I've watched it. It's been surpassed, but I've probably seen Broken Arrow like 25 times.
It's a good movie.
It is a good movie.
I mean, you can almost say, like, Face Off, like, Travolta's career kind of is similar to Cage's career in that he's done a bunch of terrible stuff too. You know, a bunch of terrible, like, straight-to-video stuff. Like, he had that damn, was it like a John Gotti retrospective that came out? Or like,
yeah, and it made, like, less than $1 million at the box office.
Like, set a record for, like, the worst performance, I think.
I think it set a record for, like, yeah, that's what you mean, yeah, like, worst financial performance, yeah. Well, yeah, the last movie that John Travolta did that was truly profitable was in 2007 when he was in Hairspray, where he played the mom. He played the big fat mother.
Yeah, you told me that before. I haven't seen.
And he's had starring roles in movies since, like From Paris with Love and stuff like that. And I just have no interest in seeing it. I know that you saw his really weird movie directed by Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, I like that movie. I mean, just because I like him playing
like Fanatic or whatever. So that's made me curious and think maybe it's worth watching.
A person on the spectrum somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know he's R-worded.
Yeah. So that's made me curious, thinking maybe it's worth watching.
Well, I think it's funny thinking about him, as you know, he ad-libbed a lot of that, you know, and I just think about Fred Durst being like, "Go, John, go," and he's just like, you know, okay, what would somebody do? And then, you know, I'd love to see the cut footage of that. Just him, you know, trying to act like a slow person.
I mean, his wife just died.
Yeah.
When I talk about having a hard go of things.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably is gay, but that doesn't mean he didn't care about her.
Oh, you think he was gay too?
It seems like there's overwhelming evidence. Not like Tom Cruise, I don't know, but him, it seems pretty. I mean, how many friggin' accounts do you need of like people saying like he like came on to them and stuff, and Didn't Cameron, our friend, say like he got banned from some resort because he was always like coming on to the towel boys there and stuff?
Well, I mean, she really did seem to genuinely love him, though.
Yeah, but I mean, we've heard about this sort of stuff before in Hollywood. That's like the same thing. Like what the one that married Freddie Mercury, they loved each other, just not in like a romantic love way. And neither of them regretted for a second the marriage.
Well, I mean,
it wasn't, a romantic love.
I think she was more than just a beard to him. I mean, maybe he was bisexual, who knows?
Well, I'm just saying, either way, I feel bad that she passed, and I am sure, regardless of whatever, which is not any of my business anyway, in the nature of, people's relationships. I'm just saying, I certainly do feel sympathy.
I'd actually forgotten about that, about him, the allegations. Yeah.
Again, I don't care. It isn't anybody's business, and if people want to keep it to themselves or they want to, I don't care. I do think it's unfortunate, whether it's true or not, that you get dogged by these things because they shouldn't matter so much in today's world. Because again, stuff like that is not our business. It's not the public's business.
Well, I mean, things like that can still ruin people's careers,
Yeah, and I think that's really unfortunate.
I mean, I think like Neil Patrick Harris is probably a good example of someone who's been able to, get past that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you probably never watched the show, How I Met Your Mother, but he played a great, like, straight dude in that show. Like, I think he came out while he was on that show.
Yeah. And he's playing like sort of like an alpha male.
Yeah. Like
ultimately out to get laid type guy in that show.
That's a great job, just, more of a testament to his acting ability.
Yeah.
Because
it's pretty funny once you get, like, it's not a good movie, but once you get to his third appearance in the Harold and Kumar movies, because by that time he had come out and it's actually part of his career renaissance. Because in the first two movies, that was sort of the joke, was like Neil Patrick Harris, people remembered him from Doogie Howser, but it wasn't like he was a big deal anymore. In fact, that was partially what got him the job on How I Met Your Mother, which helped resurrect his career and turn him into a big star. So by the time the third movie comes out, he is a big star, and they're talking about it. And the whole thing is like, but of course, in the context of that reality, he still really is straight, right? So the whole thing is he's just pretending to be gay because it makes him even more popular and stuff. He's coming out, and he has that great line when he comes on to those two girls. She's like, "Wait a minute, I thought you were gay." He's like, "Yeah, I'm gay. Gay for that pussy." Which I think is awesome.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
Is that the Christmas one?
That's the Christmas one. Because there's at some point where, like, yeah, again, because the first two, he's just sort of like, because of where he was at in his career, like, people knew who Patrick Harris was, but he was just sort of roaming around being crazy. And this, it's like backstage at some like big Christmas performance, like he's putting on because he's a big star now and stuff. And yeah, it's like one of the backup dancers. He's coming on to her.
Yeah, I think of like Doogie Howser. Of course, I watched that show a good bit.
I've never seen it ever.
And then, like, I think Starship Troopers, Doogie Howser. Neil Patrick Harris. Yeah.
See, that was sort of that's where his life was at for like a while, right? It was like he was this formal child star known for the show, and then he showed up in that movie. Like, it was, I guess, kind of a big deal at the time, but quickly came just sort of a joke. It's like, okay, that's kind of his career, But then things change. And yeah, the Harold and Kumar thing is really a big part of it, which I think is funny because that's almost like random. Like, wouldn't it be funny, like, if we can get Doogie Howser and like make him just absolutely crazy? Like, that directly led to him getting the job in How I Met Your Mother, which is what turned everything around and turned him into this big household name. Now he's got like big variety shows he puts on, and like he has like a circus show and stuff. Like, yeah, he's like considered like one of the ultimate showmen, right?
He looks like, just like that guy from Malcolm in the Middle. The brothers with the guy from that '70s show.
Oh yeah, they did look a lot alike. So wait a second, I can think of his name. Masterson.
Yeah, Danny
was that '70s show. Was this Chris Masterson?
Maybe so. Yeah, very similar looking guys.
Yeah, there's actually in the early 2000s, I used to watch Mad TV. There's a pretty good episode where both of them are on it together, the two brothers, and there's this this really great bit where they're doing where they're playing cops in a sketch and they're doing the good cop, bad cop thing to this guy. It's really funny, but I can't remember because I haven't seen it in God knows how many years. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both Scientologists, I think.
Yeah, and Danny's been accused of like raping a bunch of people.
Really?
Yeah, that's why he got kicked off the ranch.
Oh.
No idea if it's true or not, so I won't speculate. But speaking of Malcolm in the Middle, probably the saddest thing about that is, did you know that guy, who isn't an actor anymore, Frankie Muniz, he has like some sort of medical thing that's affected his memory. He has no memory of being on that show. He almost has almost no memory of his time as like a popular child actor. Like when he was on that show and he did like Agent Cody Banks and stuff. That's a blank slate to him. That might as well have happened to someone else.
That sucks, man.
Yeah. He basically runs his own store. He has some sort of store he works at now. Just lives a quiet life, and like people will come up to him like, "I loved you on Malcolm in the Middle," and he's just like, "Okay." He might as well have been a different person. Like it's completely cut off from his memory. He has no memory of that.
Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Oh.
He was on the very first episode I ever saw of Criminal Minds before I started watching Criminal Minds, and he plays a character based on Frank Miller. So it's really weird. So it's like he's like a really popular comic book writer and artist, and he's basically based on Frank Miller. Like his drawing style is kind of the same way, right? And it's all about how he's trying to like come up with this new character, and he's got like this really pretty girlfriend that I think he's gonna like propose to, and then they get attacked in an alley and she gets murdered, and then he has like a weird psychotic break where he starts like having dissociative episodes where he's like killing gang members, but he has no idea who's doing it. It's a pretty good episode. I mean, it's a little bit unbelievable. It's actually one of the more unbelievable episodes of that show because like it's almost like he is a comic book character because he's literally like with no gun or anything, like going into like houses full of gangbangers and tearing them to pieces, which is pretty cool. None of it is shown. It's just always the aftermath, but it's a pretty cool episode. And it ends with like a quote by Frank Miller too. It's all like a big tribute to him. It's like Frankie Muniz as like a young, weird version of Frank Miller who turns into a psycho killer.
I'm just looking at Neil Patrick Harris's filmography.
I haven't really seen him in too many movies. I know he was in Gone Girl.
Yeah, but that was kind of after he came back.
Oh, yeah, that's like 2014.
That was a good movie. I liked Gone Girl.
I think it's overrated.
He gets fucked up in that movie.
Oh yeah, she like
that off or something, doesn't she?
Yeah, she like slashes his throat. He bleeds all over the place. I think while having sex with her or something. Yeah. I think the movie's pretty overrated. Don't care about it. Actually, I think I told you this before. The same author wrote a different book called Dark Places, which they made a movie version of too. That I like a lot better.
Dark Places. Huh.
It's a really good story. I don't know how well the movie does a job of it. And I think I've told you this before, too, because the lead character in that is, I never, ever remember her name, but the tall, statuesque blonde from South Africa.
Oh, Charlize.
Yeah. See, I've never heard that name before or after. She's the only Charlize I've ever heard of in the history of ever. So that name just doesn't register. So I can never, ever think of her. I've never heard of somebody in history being called that, anything. Charlize, I don't know. So anyway, Charlize Theron. So this is getting to the point where I've talked about, how we talk about casting actors, and I'm not talking about race or anything. I'm just talking about description because it all depends on what kind of writer you are. For instance, if you are being cast in a movie based on like a novel written by Stephen King, it really does. It can be pretty open to interpretation because most of the time, Stephen King barely describes his characters. He might say something like he was a middle-aged man. Mm-hmm. He's not the type of person that talks about what race somebody was or what their height or build was. But some people are, and I was. And a big part of Dark Places is the main character is this young woman, and it's pointed out that she's super short. She's like not even 5 feet. She's like 4'11", and that a lot of people notice her because she has very large breasts, and that she had them ever since she was a kid. So it was always sort of an odd thing. And it makes sense because at one point in the movie, she tracks down her father, who she hasn't seen in a bunch of years, who's like this weird unstable homeless guy. And he's been living in like this sort of like community of other homeless people. And he's in like this, it's weird. He's like in like it's like one of those big like oil things. And it's like there's a ladder to get down into it. And that's where he's been. And the whole point is he's like in his 60s. He's pretty frail. He's not a big guy. And the whole thing is he's, hardly an intimidating person. But she's intimidated by him because she's actually still physically smaller and weaker than him. And then she gets played by Charlize Theron. And I understand that to a certain extent because there's simply no Hollywood actress that fits that physical description. And if you're going to get a movie off the ground, you probably need somebody like Charlize Theron to carry it.
I'd argue Thora Birch could play it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they wouldn't look exactly like as described, but they'd at least be closer, right?
Short ladies that are well endowed.
Yeah, but they actually go to a point in the book of saying like ridiculously well endowed. Like the whole point is you really notice that this woman is short with huge boobs, so it makes like an odd look. And I realize that's a sort of a weird thing to be able to cast a movie. Anyway, it's a pretty good movie. It's worth watching. I really like the book. It's an interesting setup.
She's like 6 feet tall.
Oh yeah, she's super tall. Like that's what I mean. Like as far as actresses go, they picked one of the tallest around. That's why I think it's funny.
Because she was a model first, I think, right?
Yeah, she was.
And she was in. Did you ever see 2 Days in the Valley?
No.
She's extremely hot in that. But
is Ed Wharton in that, or is that mixing that up with someone else?
No, it's Jeff. Jeff Daniels. It's like one of the first things she did after one of her first movies.
I don't know what the earliest movie I saw her in was.
She has a battle, like her and Terry Hatcher fight.
Oh, nice.
Her first movie was Children of the Corn 3: Urban Harvest. Yet another big actress that started in Children of the Corn movies.
Yeah. So I guess So I have seen that movie, although I barely remember it. Because after 2, they become garbage.
Because what's the New Zealand Naomi Watts? She was in one of those, and so was.
Oh, I adore Naomi Watts. I think she's Australian.
Oh, she's Australian. Okay.
Yeah, but I love Naomi Watts. I haven't seen her lately, but I'm sure she's still very beautiful. She's absolutely gorgeous in the King Kong remake, by the way. That might be like her at like her best. She's like 2005. Great. But she's the Fay Ray character in that.
Eva Mendes was also in one of those sequels.
Oh, cool. I got off track, but yeah, it's a pretty good book. I like it a lot better than Gone Girl. I've read both books, and I've seen both movies, and I think it's both a better book and movie, Dark Places. But that's just me.
I think that's on my Netflix.
It's certainly worth a watch. It's really interesting sort of story because it's one of those things that has like a sort of a complicated setup and a really complicated sort of a solution to it too. I like it because it's a bit of a mystery. Because it's about like this woman and like her family like survived like this attack where a few people were murdered and stuff. And at the time there was like a suspect thinking that it was her own brother that had done the murders and that had ties to Satanism and stuff because this would have happened back in the 80s. It's good because the way the book's written is like it's set at now, but it's also the brother's been in jail for like years for this. He did get convicted of it and stuff, and that was always been the official story was that like her older brother, like because he was like part of like a group of Satanists, like killed members of the family, and he's been in jail. But the book bounces back and forth between this. One chapter will be in the present, and one chapter will be back on the day it all happened. And, it'll take you through the day right up to the murders. It's pretty well written. I like it. I forget the name of that. Is that Jodi Picoult? Who the hell is that author? Anyway, Gone Girl was a huge hit and was like a big, big bestseller.
Did Affleck direct that?
He was in it. And that was the movie where he like refused to wear like a Boston or a New York Yankees hat or something.
I respect the hell out of that, man. Because I hate the Yankees too. But I get it. It's part of your job. But
yeah, see, I respected the concept, but I mean, if you're an actor, you play things. I mean, come on, what a stupid place to draw the line. Kevin Bacon's out there playing pedophiles.
I mean, like, what if you had to wear a Flyers hat,
I could do it for a part.
Yeah.
Hey, I fucking hate the Flyers, but I could do it for a part. especially if like he's a
Flyers
jerk.
like most, right? Isn't that the team you hate the most?
Nowadays, it probably is the Bruins, but it was the Flyers most of my life. It was the Flyers most of my life. Bruins more because of recent history, because of what they've done to the Leafs the last bunch of years. Which, well, I said, ironically, the Bruins were my second favorite team back in the 90s. I like the Leafs, then I like the Bruins because I loved Ray Bourque and Cam Neely. I love those guys. Ray Bourque is my favorite my favorite player to never play for the Leafs is Ray Bourque by like a country mile. And he was like Mr. Bruins. And then he had to go to Colorado to win a cup. But anyway. It's tough winning a cup. It's not like NBA. Gretzky won no cups after he left Edmonton. You can't carry. I don't care how good a player you are. In hockey, you cannot carry a team by yourself. It's impossible.
Are there salary caps in the NHL?
Yeah, ever since the lockout of 04-05, that was part of it. Doesn't seem to matter. The cap just goes up every year.
I think salary caps are a good thing.
Oh, yeah. I agree with them on at least in principle.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got teams like the Yankees who just spend like, 10 times what your other average team might spend on salaries.
I know, because I mean in the 90s it was at its worst because you had your hot big market teams that were rich, they could just buy stuff, and small market teams couldn't afford to keep their stars.
Exactly.
And a lot of the small market teams were Canadian teams, right? So if you had like Doug Weight in Edmonton, one of the only legitimate stars they had in the 90s, he's gone, and you just see that repeated throughout the league. A lot of, it happened in American stuff too, but I mean, it's especially sensitive watching like small market Canadian teams like the Flames or whatever lose their stars to like the Rangers. And the Rangers were hilarious because the Rangers of the second half of the 90s into the early 2000s were known for loading up on stars and still being terrible. They kept signing like big stars and paying all this money, and they'd still miss the playoffs. It's pretty funny.
I know. At the Yankees, that's what the Yankees did for many years too.
Well, at least they won.
Sometimes.
The Rangers never did. So, yeah, salary cap's definitely a better thing. But it almost seems pointless because it just goes up every single year. Every year it goes up by a few more million. And, hockey is obviously behind the other sports as far as, salaries go. But it's even getting to a point now where, like, there's at least a handful of players in the NHL that make more than $10 million, which just does not seem right.
It's a lot of money.
But I could go on forever, as I've said. I think the most overpaid people on the entire planet are professional baseball players. I don't think there's anybody that's more overpaid than them.
You say that, and I don't disagree, but when you look at the amount of money that the owners get off of this shit, that's a drop in the bucket what they're paying these guys.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's the whole thing that caused the lockout, right? You had 600 millionaires versus 30 billionaires, but the billionaires still win.
Yeah.
Because billions is a lot more than millions.
I just, yeah.
Now, the average owner, it's just a hobby for them. That's not what they do to make money. They've already made their money. Owning a team is just a hobby for them.
Yeah. It's rare that you get your Mark Cubans that actually get involved.
And it's not just a hobby too. It's also part of like, I'm already like a billionaire, but I can add to my status even more, right? It's another thing to get you like respect in the world.
I saw a stat the other day that when Mark Cuban bought the Dallas Mavericks, he paid like whatever, $1 billion or whatever it was. They're worth like 6 times that now. They're worth like $6 billion.
Yeah. See, capitalism is great if you start out with money.
Of course it is. Yeah.
That's how capitalism is great. I like when people defend it as like the best system in the world. It's like, yeah, if you start out with money, then you have a great advantage to make even more money. But if you start out with no money, well, then good luck. Then it's all just luck.
And it's all hard work.
Yeah. Just like the idea of like the American dream, which is basically a lie. It's like, because it happens like once out of like 10,000 times, people believe in it. You're right. Like, I'm a hardworking immigrant and I came and I had like a hot dog stand and I got really good and then I franchised. Yeah. Now I'm a millionaire and I own restaurants. It's like, yes, that happens one out of every, how many millions, thousands of times.
The thing is, though, Americans have gotten so lazy that, it really is possible for immigrants to come over here with their better work ethic and make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, there's lots of stories of it.
Just more power to them.
Never watched Little Children. That's on my Netflix now. I've heard it's good. One of those sort of really serious and depressing dramas, but sometimes I'm down for them. I like Kate Winslet a lot as an actress.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't say that I agree. I mean, I just don't watch a lot of movies she's in. I haven't seen very much that she's done.
No, she's another one where I like, there's actresses I like Natalie Portman, because I just really enjoy Natalie Portman. But then there's actresses I like say a Kate Winslet or that other person, blonde, I sometimes talk about, where I actually legitimately think they're like, not saying Natalie Portman can't act or anything. I just mean I'm going to like Natalie Portman no matter what she does, just because I'm super attracted and into Natalie Portman. Right. I'm saying with somebody like Kate Winslet, I can separate that and actually, I mean, she's attractive enough, I suppose, and just actually like really like the performance she gives. I think like she's good at playing different characters.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is, I can't remember her name, Zero Dark 30, even though I didn't even see that movie.
Chastain.
Yeah, Jessica Chastain. I really like Jessica Chastain. I think she does really good acting.
I do too.
So, yeah.
Again, though, I mean, she hasn't done a lot of movies I've seen just because, I'm not going to watch a lot of, romantic comedies, stuff like that.
Well, obviously, romantic comedies are not what I'm basing this on, because I don't really think they're full of great performances per se. I mean, Kate Winslet, though, is going to be most famous for, once again, going back to probably Titanic, and I don't give a damn about Titanic or what she does in that. But she's in quite a few films where I enjoy her performance. I mean, one of my favorites, of course, is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah. She's probably like a modern-day Meryl Streep, would you say?
There's definitely some similarities there.
Or not modern day, but just...
Like a later generation, yeah.
Right. That, she's probably going to be doing this for a long time and winning awards for a long time,
She actually is in a romantic comedy I kind of like. She's in, I think it's called The Holiday or something. It's a pretty stupid, whimsical sort of setup. It's like Kate Winslet is some Brit who's upset with her life, and I think it's like Cameron Diaz is somebody in LA and she gets dumped or something. They do one of those house swapping things that you sometimes hear about, where it's like, oh, I need to get away, so they swap houses, and the whole thing is like they both sort of find love doing that. And the funny thing is, like, for like Cameron Diaz, it's actually Kate Winslet's brother, who is played by Mr. Good Looking, man, I'm terrible tonight. He's in so many movies in 2004.
Jude Law.
Jude Law, thank you. So he's played by Jude Law. You fucking nailed it. It's Jude Law. And in Kate Winslet's thing, she actually finds up falling in love with a character played by Jack Black, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, it's sort of a fun movie as far as that goes.
I think I've seen that, actually. I just don't remember anything about it. Because I knew Cameron Diaz was in it.
But she's in, like, Finding Neverland, which is a really good movie with good performance. She's in The Reader, which has really good movie and performance. So, Kate Winslet's in some, like, legitimately, like, good, serious stuff that I like.
She got an Oscar for The Reader, didn't she?
Probably.
Because I think I actually have a copy of that, and I haven't ever watched it.
She's also one of the movies that I'll never watch again when she's young, which is, I guess, a good movie, but it disturbs me too much, which is that one that Peter Jackson did, Heavenly Creatures. God, I hate that movie. I hate it so much.
Do you legitimately hate it?
Yeah, but it's more like it just upsets me than it's a bad movie. I just find it really upsetting.
Yeah, I watched that again not too long ago, actually.
Yeah, it's a movie I most likely would not. She's married to Sam Mendes? Or she was married to Sam Mendes. She's on her third marriage.
Wow.
I don't know who Edward Abel Smith is, but her second husband was Sam Mendes, who I know, well-known British director who directed a few of the most recent James Bond movies. She's younger than I thought. She's 44. I would have thought she was a bit older. Anyway, my point is, I like a lot of Kate Winslet's performances, and I mean, she's pretty enough, but she's not one of those actors where I'm like obsessed with like how hot she is or anything. She's fine, but I can just get into her performance.
Exactly. Yeah, she's not like a bombshell, but yeah. I think that's a good thing.
I think so too. Like I said, I don't mean to be hard on like actresses that are super attractive or the ones I'm into, and I don't want to be like sexist or something. But sometimes, I'm just so distracted by how like into them I am that it doesn't really matter to me how good their acting is. Like I said, like I don't think there's anything wrong with Natalie Portman as an actress. I think she's proven she can act well, but I'm not going to care either way because I just enjoy seeing her up there.
I mean, I say that, but getting roles based on how hot you are. You notice when they start to age, right? I mean,
yeah, you do.
And then it's just like with Meryl Streep. She was the same way. She was never ugly, by any means, but she was never like, damn, that she was hot in that movie or whatever.
Yeah. So Kate Winslet did win Best Actress for The Reader, and she has a pile of other nominations too. She got nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Sense and Sensibility, which is also a really good movie, although not the type of thing a lot of people are going to be into. Yeah, it's probably not your thing. I don't know. It's what's her name? Oh my God, what is wrong with me? Jane Austen.
Oh yeah.
She got nominated for Best Actress for Titanic, which I don't know if her acting is really good. It was just Titanic was just so swept up that it got everything. I never even heard of Iris, but she got another Best Supporting Actress nomination for Iris, which is a movie from 2001, another nomination for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and nominated for Best Actress for Little Children. But anyway, yeah. So again, I'm not, me. I usually don't care about awards, and I think they're flawed anyway. But at least it lines up a bit that I think that she's a legitimately good actress that has done a lot of good stuff.
And she was in Contagion, right? That we did on.
Yeah, that's right. Is she one of the doctors or something?
I think she's the one that dies. She gets it and then dies. Or yeah, she dies.
What's so annoying about her Wikipedia page here is it does not have her filmography as like a separate thing. Usually you can just click and go right down to filmography. You can't do that for her, despite how large her friggin' thing is here. Okay, list of Kate Winslet performances. Here's a separate thing. Okay, because it has its own page. List. I think it's funny that like she'd already been in Heavenly Creatures and Sense and Sensibility when she was quite young, and those are like really well, respected movies directed by Peter Jackson and Ang Lee. And then she was in A Kid in King Arthur's Court. She's like the British princess that the American kid like has a crush on or whatever when he goes back in time. An unknown Daniel Craig is also in that movie. He's like one of the knights. Yeah, he's like a knight.
Man, Kate Winslet is super busy. Like
she's in the '96 Hamlet, which I always really like. The corporate, not the corporate Hamlet, the Kenneth Branagh one, the actual Hamlet that's set somewhere in the 18th century, which is a really great movie that I'd love to own. Yeah, so she's in a lot of really good stuff, man.
She's got like 7 projects that are either in post or pre-production.
I gotta see what Iris is. Biographical drama about novelist Iris Murdoch and her relationship with her husband. Yeah. I hadn't heard of that. Judi Dench is in it, though. That's pretty cool. Life of David Gale.
It's a good movie.
I don't think it actually. Oh, she's in Carnage, which is a good movie. Polanski movie.
Carnage? Oh, is that the one with Riley? John C. Reilly?
Yes.
That's a good movie. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Based on a play, obviously. It's all talking.
Uh-huh.
She's going to be in Avatar, too.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's pretty cool. If it ever fucking comes out, that is.
Well, she must die because she's not in 3.
But yeah, she's been super productive and busy throughout her life. I'm trying to think what's the newest thing I've seen her. The newest thing I've seen her, and it actually goes back a few years. She's in those Divergent movies. Not that I care about those. So actually, I haven't seen her in a movie for a few years. Oh, she's one of the 4 movie people that got like blackmailed into being in movie 43. I've seen movie 43, and my God.
Contagion, maybe the last thing I've seen her in.
Yeah, you don't want to see movie 43, which she did right after Contagion. She didn't do any movie in 2012. That's weird.
Because I didn't watch that Steve Jobs movie.
No, me neither.
What's Blackbird?
I don't know. A remake of the Danish film Silent Heart. I don't know. But anyway, she's got a really good track record. Don't need to harp on it. But anyway, we've dragged this out into a whole bunch of other things, so I guess we can wrap up.
Cool.
And finish off here. Where the hell's the?
That's
There.
Kate Winslet's career.
Yeah, that's what this was about, right? Just Kate Winslet and the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
What else popped into our head? But I mean, yeah, the movie itself, yeah, I was expecting it to actually be worse. It's not that bad, you know. The Phantom. I get why it wasn't a success, but it's not like you're gonna pick it out as like a terrible, awful movie from the '90s. It's just more kind of one of the more forgettable movies of the '90s. And I think it's too bad because I think Billy Zane's cool, but just didn't work out. Oh well.
Yeah.
What can you do? So anyway, don't know when we'll do another one, but sooner or later we'll get around to do some other ones, and hopefully, yeah, next week we'll come back with another movie discussion Pocket Dimension show, and yeah, see if you can find Cloud Atlas because I wouldn't mind doing that pretty soon.
It's on Netflix, I believe.
Oh, it's on your Netflix. That's great because yeah, I've actually owned that on Blu-ray, and
yeah, I'd like to watch it.
And we can also turn to a larger discussion about the Wachowskis. So, you know, they've had their movies are interesting, especially visually. And I mean, Cloud Atlas, even if you like don't like the story or whatever, it's just a gorgeous, sumptuous movie to look at. And if you want a movie that's like pure eye candy that they did, like and it was a flop, is the Speed Racer movie. Like that Speed Racer movie is just like crazy, crazy colors, computer animated colors and stuff popping out at you all over the place. Like I really like its cool visual style. I thought it was neat, but
yeah,
I don't know. I guess the audiences didn't agree. And speaking of, not to turn this in because we're wrapping up here, but another actor who was like sort of big for a really short period and then disappeared just as quickly was Emile Hirsch, who is the star of that movie. Like Emile Hirsch around 2007, 8, 9. Oh, okay, here we go. He's an Alpha Dog 2006, and then he just sort of fades away.
That Speed Racer didn't help things, I think.
No, probably not. I mean, that must have had a massive budget, that movie, because of all the computer effects.
It's an odd choice. I mean, you gotta give him credit for taking swings, you know.
Yeah, but I like, and again, and I understand why it didn't do well, but I like the movie. I mean, in some places it's a little too over the top. You know, it's got like John Goodman as the pop guy. I don't know if we really need that, but I don't know. I guess it's all right.
I haven't seen that one either.
Matthew Fox is, again, speaking of somebody that was famous for 5 seconds, Matthew Fox was in it. Yeah. You know, coming off his fame from that show, Lost.
Oh,
like,
Lost.
he's, you know, like Lost made him a big star, so he got into movies, and then it just, no.
I remembered him on Party of Five. I didn't watch that show, but I knew he was on there.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that till years after the fact. But Lost is what made him a big star, and like so a lot of people that are big stars in shows, they sometimes break into movies, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, and it didn't really seem to for him. Although again, I'm sure he's still doing stuff. But.
Yeah. Hell, he probably made enough money off of that show to retire.
Yeah, this is a super popular show. I mean, that's been over for how long has that been over, and people are still talking about it. So.
A while.
I know Eric likes to bring it up all the time. It's something he enjoyed, so there you go. I watched a couple random episodes in Ryan's basement a couple times, but you know they were out of order and I didn't know what was going on. So I know what the setup was, but beyond that, I don't know.
I've watched like 2 episodes.
That's J.J. Abrams, right?
Yep.
Yeah, J.J. Abrams came in like the mid-2000s and introduced this kind of TV that was like, here's a great concept, except we haven't thought the whole thing through. So here's some really good early episodes, and then things will just go in crazy directions because we didn't have a full plan. And a lot of people really got into those sorts of shows. I was I don't know. I think I would have rathered something that was planned start to finish instead of we didn't know we'd get to this many episodes. We don't know what to do now. And that seems to be what it was with Lost. It's like we thought maybe like 10 episode miniseries. Now we're in like the 4th season and we don't know what's supposed to happen. I mean, they're far from the only show that did that. I just feel like that was like ushered in like that sort of era. They did the same thing. There's a big show at the same time called Heroes where it's like, look, we knew the bones of this, but now things are just out of hand.
Heroes came back.
Did it?
Yeah, it came back like just a couple years ago.
That's interesting. That's another thing, like that the 2010s brought is like shows can come back now, even if they get canceled, they can come back. I mean, cancellation just used to be final. Now it's not final. Sometimes different networks pick up shows.
Because Hero like 2005, 2006, right?
That's when it started, yeah.
And it went for probably 4 seasons, and then got canceled.
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't particularly long.
And then it came back for probably just one more season. I was really into Heroes for a while.
I didn't remember. That was going to be like my show because people are sick of hearing me say it, but as far as like the whole live action hour-long drama type show, I never watched them. But Heroes, like I anticipated, I was like, this is going to be the show that I watch, and I like lost interest in it so fast. I watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes, and I was like, okay, this is not my show.
Oh man, yeah, I would go and like I didn't have internet at the time, and they were like releasing them early on their website, NBC's website. So I would like go to somebody's house that had internet just to watch that show. That's how into it I was.
Yeah, I was really excited about it because I was like, okay, I'm going to get on the ground floor for once. I'm not going to hear people telling me about a show later on. I'm going to watch this show. And I lost interest super fast. But again, that has less to do with how good or bad the show was. That's a lot to do just with my own personality when it comes to these. I don't know why. It's very hard for me to stay interested in shows.
Well, it's a lot of time to invest. I totally understand.
I guess it is, but it's not like, 1, my time is so great or valuable. And it's not like, 2, I don't do the long game for other things. For fuck's sake, I watch Dragon Ball, and it's like 80% filler. There are 291 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and I've watched every one of them more than once. And there's at least 35 of those that are complete crap and a waste of time. And then, even when you get into the important ones, they're just full of stuff that are just dragging it out. Like, the fight, the actual final confrontation in the Cell Saga is like 12 episodes for one fight. So it's not like so I don't know. It's weird.
They do a lot of like reusing animation and stuff.
Yeah, not as much as you think though. But I just mean, I bet you if you go to YouTube and you looked up like Dragon Ball Z, just people powering up, you could get like a video that's like 4 hours long. It could be 4 hours of footage of various characters going and like everything glowing and rocks. Yeah. I bet you could get like at least 4 hours of footage out of that.
In the entire run?
Ooh, the Seattle Kraken. How about that?
Oh, is that what they're called? That's a new team, right?
Yeah, it's been decided today that it's going to be the Kraken, which I guess is cool because I've never heard of another sports team called that. So at least it's original, right? Like, because usually it's just like something. It's like, well, maybe there hasn't been a major league one, but we've heard it in some minor league or European league or whatever like that. But I've never heard of a Kraken for any sport in any league. So good for them.
I want to be like the Kaiju.
Yeah.
The Seattle Crest. I mean, I guess it could be worse, but it's like an odd choice. Like
for a while yesterday, Seattle Seaman was trending, but I think that was more of a joke, right?
Oh, come on, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
What would their mascot be? A sperm?
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's like the Captain Highlander phase of the Islanders. Like the Islanders were already at like the worst point in their history anyway in the mid-90s, and then they changed the uniform briefly to like terrible colors with a picture of like an old sailor in like a yellow like rain slicker and hat. Oh my god, what an embarrassing jersey to have to put on.
That's awesome.
And speaking of owning teams, I think I told you there's that great 30 for 30 I watched just before I went to Sydney in June called Big Shot, and it's about that guy who like basically bluffed his way into owning the Islanders. Like,
yeah, tell me about that.
It's really entertaining stuff. Like the idea that you could just basically convince I'm super rich. Yep. I'm a millionaire. I'm actually a billionaire. Just all bullshit, just all made up, and he got away with it for like almost a full year. And really was the actual owner of the team. At a terrible time for them, as I said. They were not a good team. They had those terrible uniforms and stuff.
Is Kraken, that's just a general term. I was thinking maybe trademarked by
Yeah, it's just like generic sea monster.
Okay.
Is what a Kraken is. I guess it's probably from Norse mythology. I think it's specifically a Norse sort of sea monster.
And Release the Kraken was from a movie, right?
It was from a movie that didn't even line up with real Kraken stuff. It's from oh shit, what's it called? It's from like a Greek type movie. It's like based on Greek myth. They even made a fucking remake of it a few years ago. Why can't I think of what it's called? It's like something of the gods or something. Well, I go check that out.
Come on, damn it. Just tell me what it is. Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans, yeah. It's from Clash of the Titans. Which just shows like how little research is put into that movie. I think it's from the early 80s. Like, release the Kraken. It's like there were no Krakens in ancient Greek mythology. There were, again, probably mythical sea monsters, but Kraken is not a Greek term. It's like a Norse term. But anyway. But yeah, in 2010, they made a remake of it. That was like, yeah, that's what everybody remembers for. Release the Kraken.
Wow, I'm looking at some screenshots of what it looked like in the remake. That is fucking terrible.
They had a Kraken in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Yeah, I've looked up stuff on that too. It's always really interesting. Sea monster myths. Most of them are based on, whales or giant squid. I've always been fascinated by the giant squid because, it wasn't until only 2006 or something that humans ever actually observed a live giant squid at depth. The only reason we knew that giant squid existed was by finding their corpses washed up on beaches.
Right.
They were far too deep for people to think. And now that we have the cameras, we still couldn't find them. And one of the things that's still never been captured by camera or anything is one of the more fascinating things is that sperm whales hunt them. And the sperm whales dive really deep down to get them, to kill them. And I would love to see a confrontation between them. Because again, they know this because sperm whales have scars on their faces from fighting them and
right.
and they'll find them in their innards and stuff. But it's never actually been observed. Actually, in the book, Sphere, which was written in 1987 when they get attacked by a giant squid. At the time, because it takes place in 1987, they were like, we're the first human beings to actually physically encounter a giant squid underwater.
Is that Michael Crichton?
Yeah, that's Crichton.
Is that a good one?
Oh, yeah, it's a good book.
I need to read something, man. I'm still in this damn Stephen King Outsider, and it's about halfway through, and I'm trying to decide whether or not I should give up.
The show is a big disappointment, so I'm sure the book can't be much better.
It's just not good.
I'm back to reading Haruki Murakami, so it's all crazy stuff that I'm reading right now. I mean, book-wise.
It was a bunch of stuff I was trying to remember to mention to you about it because it's Stephen King's out of touch, right? I mean, he's out of touch with actual society.
I'm sure he must be by now, yeah.
And this is supposed to be in Oklahoma, set in Oklahoma. I mean, I know the show is in Georgia, I believe, but the book is set in Oklahoma somewhere. And there was a couple of examples of just dialogue that people wouldn't use in real life that I tried to remember, and I forgot what I was going to tell you about it.
That's too bad because he has a history of pretty good dialogue. So, I mean, I wouldn't say he's one of the best, but always, pretty believable, more or less natural sounding dialogue.
Yeah.
I don't know who would be the best, really. Dialogue is something I consider one of my strengths as a writer, but I don't know.
It's hard to do. I mean, people can say it's easy, but it's not believable dialogue is not easy.
I think dialogue is another one of those things that people really can get split on too. There's not really any good main consensus of what makes good dialogue. Because there's a lot of people I think that are known for doing good dialogue, and some I agree with and some I don't. People love Tarantino's dialogue. I don't like Tarantino's dialogue. In fact, I think it's one of his weaknesses to that point.
I think he's really gotten ridiculous with it, but at a point, I think it was really good. Hateful Eight, there's some ridiculous shit in there. But
yeah, I think, for the most part, it's actually okay because it fits the movies he's doing. I think that's more than what it is. I think he's good at coming up dialogue that fits what he's doing, but I don't think that means he's universally good at dialogue, I guess is kind of what it is. Yeah, Hateful Eight's okay, I guess.
I mean, I don't really think any of his stuff is bad. I still haven't finished Hollywood.
I think that's bad. Not like it's again, I've said it a million times. It looks really good. It evokes the time period. Blah, blah, blah. I just mean as far as being like a movie with a story I'm supposed to follow and care about, I don't care. But
I know it's gotten a lot of criticism, and I don't know if I'm going to watch The Irishman. Honestly,
I have no desire to watch. I feel like I've seen it a million times already. I've already seen this. I've seen Scorsese put those actors and make them be like gangsters. I don't need to see it all with a bunch of older guys or use CG to make them look young. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm never going to watch it. It's just, even if it was an hour and a half, I probably wouldn't watch it. But the fact that it's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I remember when it first came out, like, at least for me, there was a surge on my Twitter of people saying, like, the Irishman is like 3 hours that just flies by. And I was like, this feels like so forced. It seems like people are like going out of their way to like say this. I don't know if they actually believe it or they just want people to like believe them. And you know me, I try not to make runtime necessarily be a hurdle for movies because I like a lot of long movies. But
it is one of my pet peeves though, when they stretch things like the end sequence of It Too. It chapter 2.
It keeps going. It's too long. It's too drawn out. Because I didn't mind it when I saw it in the theater, but my first time rewatching it, I was like, "What is this ever going to end?" Yeah, so yeah, that just keeps going.
But normally, I try not to complain about it. But I mean, if you can tell the story in 90 minutes, I think shoot for that. Unless you're going for some sort of epic or something. But it's like films are in general have gotten longer run times in the past 20 years. I think. And I don't really know why that's the case, but it used to be 90 minutes. Now the average movie is probably like 225 or something.
Yeah, maybe
everything's over 2 hours. Like Avengers are over 2 hours. Like Endgame was like 3 hours, right?
If you count the credits, actually, Endgame is more like 240. But it's over 3 hours if you count the credits, because credits are super long, right?
45 minutes of credits.
I mean, it's still a long movie, but there's no way around. Endgame is a long movie, but I mean, it's also the culmination of the entire thing, so you get why it's the longest of all of them.
Sure.
Because, I mean, really, the Avenger movies are only the long ones. I mean, like the Thor movie's not long, Captain America's not long. I don't mind it for Avengers, because it's like, sort of the culmination. It's the ensemble piece, so. But, I don't know. I think the average movie is probably about an hour 45 these days. I don't think it's 2 hours yet.
I wonder if I can search that. Doing 2020.
I really want to go back to the movies. Like I said, I'm super annoyed that Cineplex is open theaters across the country, including 2 here, but not my downtown one. Because I am not going out to the big theaters here. I'm not jumping on buses to do that nonsense. I just want to go into the walk downtown and go to the theater, but it's not open. That pisses me off to no end.
What are they doing? Are they just doing like social distancing in the theaters?
Yeah, and I guess they're, limiting how many people can come in, and, certain seats will be blocked off. So, I mean, that all sounds fine to me, because you know how I see movies anyway. Whenever I go to movies, it's empty anyway. I'm going, the whole point is, it had nothing to do with COVID. I always went to avoid crowds if I could.
Yeah, me too.
I'm like, okay, I'll go Wednesday afternoon at 3:15. Great, if I can. I obviously can't always do that, but I'm in a position to do that more than a lot of people. So that's how the last few years, that's how I've seen most movies, is just like in a mostly empty theater some random afternoon is how I've seen a lot of movies. And I was looking forward to doing that again because they were starting with like $5 movies. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go see The Invisible Man, which I've heard was a pretty good movie. I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great thing to get me back into the theater experience with. I don't want to go on a bus and go out to the big theater. I just want to go to my small downtown theater. So I don't know when the hell that's going to open. But it's annoying because I keep getting like emails and stuff saying, oh, we're open now. I'm like, not the one I want.
Yeah, I know I've been to restaurants just maybe 2 times since, things opened back up. And it's, like a table. They skip a table in between. And you wear your mask until, unless you're eating.
I don't feel too bad about it here because Nova Scotia has been doing very well. I mean, I don't know how people in other parts of the world feel because there are certain parts where things have not been good. And as Canada was doing really well coming into July, but now in the last week, places out west have had some spikes. Not like huge spikes, but still enough for some concern, right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
we've had some pretty big spikes lately. Like we've got a mandatory mask right now.
yeah. Oh yeah. There's all sorts of parts of the U.S. that have been pretty bad. I mean, where Eric lives is one of the worst places. Like Austin. Like I feel bad for anybody that had like, let's say like I don't know, you fall and break your leg. Like good luck going to a hospital like in a place like that because I've heard their hospitals are overflowing.
Yeah. Well,
That's rough.
there's been a lot of questions about the numbers and the accuracy of the numbers, and I've heard a lot of stuff that doesn't sound good. So I think we're gonna see some fraud in all this.
Oh, I mean, yeah, in a situation like this, there's always going to be some. But I mean, as like I said, as far as the places where it's like at its worst,
Right.
like it, you do see the pictures.
Well, like New York was really bad. I think they're doing okay now.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot better. So
And then now Florida is like one of the big ones. And
I don't think anybody's surprised by Florida. They opened way too early. They had people not doing any of the rules. They had their own governor saying, "We need wrestling."
well, I mean,
I don't mean to be a jerk, but I mean, even before any of this started, it was kind of understood through pop culture that Florida might be the dumbest state. They've kind of really reinforced that with this whole situation.
well, I mean, California's got huge spikes all over the place, and they've got mandatory masks all over that place. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not saying just Florida.
nothing's open in California. Everything is still shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Anyway, like I said, as far as here goes, I feel pretty good about going places. And again, it's easy enough for me to avoid things like other people might be in a situation where they can't, but I still can. It's not a huge deal. I'm a little concerned about like the library I think is open again now. So, but I don't really, but again, it has certain limitations on it. So I'm a little concerned about the program I'm in, the tutoring, like how that's going to start up again in the fall. I mean, there's nothing wrong with remote, but I just feel like, again, it's not like it's so bad for me, but I just mean it was my first time doing it. I was nervous and I was happy to do it. And then like my year is kind of incomplete because of the way it happened, although I did have some remote sessions. And the person that hired me, again, it's not a job, it's just volunteer. They've left the program. So I'm a little worried that like in September is going to come and no one's even going to contact me. I'm like, I want to keep doing it. I hope somebody will have a place for me somewhere. So I'm a little nervous about that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I want to go actually maybe try to get a movie or two from the library because they've got movies there. And I haven't looked at those in obviously months and months and months because I haven't been able to go in. So there's a couple of things I want to do in the next few days. And one is to go to the library. Another is to get this haircut, which will be the first time really we'll actually have to have like actual close contact with somebody.
And my kids are supposed to go back to school in like 3 weeks.
That doesn't seem right.
I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I mean, I got to go back to school, man, at some point. I mean, we can't just shut down the world forever. I mean, if we hadn't done anything, we'd already be over this shit already. We're prolonging it by doing quarantines and everybody wearing masks and shit. Like, if it would just run its course, we'd be over with. It'd be gone. We wouldn't still be struggling with it here in fucking July.
No, I don't agree with that.
Or look at the countries that didn't do anything. I mean, it's been gone.
What do you mean? Sweden completely fucked up, and they're in a terrible situation.
Yeah, but it's gone. It doesn't exist there anymore.
Yeah, but a bunch of people are dead.
Yeah, that's what's got to happen. Herd immunity. That's the only answer to this thing.
Maybe.
I mean, they're going to develop a vaccine, and they're going to force everybody to get it, and it's going to have horrible fucking side effects that we're not even going to know for years.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the risk with vaccines, I guess. I mean, we're just unlucky that certain generations have been able to skip this sort of thing. And we're going to wind up, having to be like guinea pigs for a vaccine. But there's not much you can do about that.
Hopefully you guys aren't forced to get it.
I don't know how it's going to work.
I know they're going to force us to get it. But
I mean, as far as I've heard, the only country that's made any sort of headway with the vaccine might be India or something.
I haven't heard. I know we're looking at like September right now, I think, is what the dates I've heard.
I mean, actually, one of the leading research places in the world on this is in Nova Scotia, which I find really weird. And I don't know. They don't seem to have made any progress.
I mean, I think they're in human trials already.
Yeah, I heard about human trials in India. That's what I meant.
The beginning stages. Oh, really? Okay. That may be where I heard that. But
yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't think anybody knows the answer to this thing. I mean,
No, there's no way of knowing it when you're in it. You need to
At this point, I just wish I would
years
get
of hindsight.
it. But I mean, we don't even know if you can get it again. We don't even know that shit. Like say you got it last year, you're going to get it again this year. Like the flu.
I think they were saying that they thought there were cases of people in Vietnam getting it again, but do not take my word 100% for that. I might have misunderstood what I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to.
I heard some of that. Some of that in China too, but I don't know anything coming out of China is real news or not.
It's hard to trust a place like China.
I've talked to some of my family members that are in medical professionals, and everybody's just so unsure. They definitely think it's going to become seasonal like the flu, and they don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. What's weird too is this has led to things like normal flu actually going down around the world, but I don't know if that has to do with the virus or it has to do with the precautions people have taken, because in general people weren't being as conscientious about, because people didn't fear the flu, so people weren't always washing their hands, and people obviously weren't wearing masks and stuff. Right. So the flu in general is down around it, but that's probably just an aberration that will correct itself, within a little while.
I've never understood why the flu just doesn't go away. I mean, I know different parts of the world, they have it in Asia when it's our wintertime or whatever, and then it swaps back, when we get cold weather again. But
I don't know if I've ever had the flu at a seasonal time. I've always had the flu. I've only had the flu a few times in my life, and I always feel like it was out of season. I can remember usually, because we usually have a surge of flu where exactly when you expect it. Usually it's around late January, start of February. We're right, in the middle of winter's at its worst, and a lot of people get the flu. And I don't really remember ever having the flu at times like that. I remember having the flu in the summer at least once or twice.
Really?
So, but I mean, again, that's just random chance. I don't think it has anything to do with trends or me personally. I think sometimes it's random chance. But I mean, I'm lucky. I always boast that I don't get the flu. I've maybe had it once or twice or three times my whole life, and I don't know if I've ever had it once in my adult life. But as an adult, like I said, I've been able to do all these self-isolation and things anyway that has nothing to do with COVID. Like I said, I'm not around children and things like that as usual. And I was always a pretty conscientious hand washer, especially after one of my girlfriends who kind of insisted on it, then just became a habit.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it doesn't really affect children. So,
for the most part, no. I mean, again, there's been exceptions.
Sure.
I read about a 9-year-old died in Florida. They set the record for youngest person in Florida to die from it.
But that's good news. This thing would be really bad if it was killing old people and young people.
Yeah.
But
and it seems most of the time when kids catch it, a lot of them are asymptomatic. Mm-hmm. There was a family here, not here, but somewhere in Nova Scotia, that a few months ago had gotten it because they went to a family reunion in New Hampshire, and everybody there had it, and then they came back and it was a big family that had several kids, and the husband and wife both had it to a certain degree. They had different symptoms, and the kids were all asymptomatic. Mm-hmm. But they all tested positive for it. It was weird. The wife, it was kind of normal, what you'd expect. She had trouble breathing and stuff like that. The husband's symptoms were weird. I didn't even know. I can't remember now, but they were weird. They weren't anything I'd read about before. One of the things I think he said was his ear was plugged or something.
I've heard some crazy stuff about symptoms lately. Nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, in addition to all the other symptoms before, cough, of course, cough. And they say dry cough, right?
I think so, yeah. Because, it's gotten a lot less clear about, because at first it just seemed okay, if you're having, breathing issues, it's a good idea to get tested. Yeah, now it's if any of this thing happens, you should probably get tested, right? And, so, yeah, there's probably all sorts of people that just, are dealing with something completely unrelated, but it's enough to make you think, oh, God, it could be COVID, because it affects people in such a different way.
I just think a lot of people are asymptomatic, and I think that's part of the problem why this thing's spreading the way it does. Because
absolutely, I think that's
they don't realize
that's one of the biggest problems. That's easily one of the biggest reasons is people have it, have no idea. again, sometimes it says even people that do experience symptoms, they still can have it and not experience them for 10 days, right? There was like a 10-day incubation period. So that's absolutely one of the main things for sure. Like I said, even though I know Nova Scotia hasn't had a ton of cases, there's no way I haven't come in contact with people who've had it. I'm sure I have. By contact, I mean around, not like touching or anything.
I think it's 10-day max. I think that's the max. I mean, I think most people start show symptoms around 5 days or so, or before, 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. Through this whole thing, I felt 100% fine. There was never even a moment where I thought I could have had it. I haven't even had like a cough. I've had nothing. Everything's been completely normal for me.
I mean, there was a couple days that I didn't feel good, but I didn't have the symptoms. I just didn't feel good. And, but I haven't really gone anywhere either. I mean, with the exception of the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. I wasn't going places.
I've been to the store like one time. I mean, I go to work, but I don't interact with a lot of people that work.
I mean, I'd go to places. I mean, I go to stores, but even when other people weren't obeying the rules, I did a pretty good job. Because I'm like, I don't trust you people. Like, because they'll have the lines drawn. I would even usually leave like an extra space if I could, because I'd be like, I just want to do that.
Doing 12 feet.
Yeah, might as well.
It's such a bizarre thing because the majority of deaths are old people or in long-term care facilities, right?
Yeah, that's been the worst here.
But the thing about that is the average person that goes into a long-term care facility dies within 6 months anyway, and that's just on average. So I mean,
wow.
And it's not good, but it's not killing young people, on massive amounts. So I mean, that's one good thing about this disease.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it has such that high mortality rate for that. I guess just because I grew up going to those places and I was used to people that just lived for years and years and years, including my own grandparents. My grandmother spent 23 years in a long-term care facility. 23 years. So obviously during that, all sorts of people did die. She didn't. She didn't. So.
Yeah, I mean, when my father-in-law got it and was asymptomatic, it kind of changed my opinion of this whole thing. I just think it's so much we don't know about it. So all this. It's just been a lot of misinformation this whole time. Have you noticed that? I mean, it's just been loads of misinformation. No,
yeah, I mean that's par for the course that you expect, and of course there's conspiracy theories thrown into it too, right? There always has to be.
None of that would surprise me either, but there's always conspiracy theories. But I mean the WHO was wrong about a lot of it to begin with, and that's basically where we were getting our information. But someone lied to them, so.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's unfortunate that like the source of this was China, and China spent a good portion of time, trying to conceal things.
Which, if they had not done that, it maybe wouldn't have been quite as bad. I don't know.
I think it certainly would have lessened it. You had doctors that wanted to tell the people, and they weren't letting them.
Well, we could have banned travel earlier,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I mean, certain countries have done a better job than other countries, but the one thing, pretty much every country has kind of dropped the ball on that. Pretty much every country was too late about the travel bans.
Mm-hmm. That's just, again, because we were so misinformed.
And I don't understand how the Canadian travel ban even works, because every day I hear about Americans coming in. I'm like, how does this keep happening? What does this travel ban mean if Americans keep coming in? Like, so I really don't understand how some of these rules work anyway. It's like the travel ban's been in place for fucking months here, and yet every day I'm hearing about Americans coming in. Isn't that supposed to be impossible? So I don't know.
I mean, if I drive to the border right now, can I get in?
You're not supposed to. No.
What about the other way?
I don't know. I don't know what yours is, but right now, no, you're not supposed to. But it's happening. Is what I'm hearing, and not just by driving, but by planes and stuff. People have come in from China, I've heard, which sounds absurd. So I don't know. So I don't exactly know how the wing is. I mean, I've also heard about Americans getting, detained and sent back, but still not as many as you might think.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I've heard about people coming in from the U.S. and they got like fined for not self-isolating for the 14 days, but they weren't sent back. And I was like,
when they got there, they were supposed to isolate.
yeah, that's the rule. Like for like even because there are some exceptions, right? There are travel ban exceptions for people of certain positions, whatever. Right. Like even if you're supposed upon arriving, you're supposed to self-isolate for 14 days. But again, there's no way of actually enforcing that. It's just something you're supposed to do, right? So that's why I don't understand why so many people whined and complained about stuff anyway. I was like, well, if you just want to be your big rebel self, I guess nobody's technically stopping you because you're only being gently asked. And yet you're asking like, oh, we're living under tyranny because they're suggesting we wear masks. Okay, sure.
I mean, again, I think that is a slippery slope, but I mean,
yeah, but it's a world health issue, so I don't mind.
If me wearing a mask in public is going to keep somebody else from potentially getting it, I'll do that. Yeah, but I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. I'm not going to do that forever. If this thing doesn't go away, I mean, we can't.
I don't think we're facing that.
I don't know, man. Nothing would surprise me at this point. It's fucking.
I mean, that's true, right? I mean, so much changes so quickly. I can't say, oh, I'm sure. I can't say anything with full certainty. That's for sure. I don't know. It's too bad about the Olympics.
I mean, sports may never be coming back. As we know it. Cruises are probably done. Movie theaters probably gone forever.
Yeah, I mean, movie theaters were going to be gone, but this is definitely hastening it.
It's not helping. Although
it might lead to a resurgence in the drive-ins, what I've heard. Which I mean, I don't own a car, but I guess it's good for other people, which is kind of cool.
Do you have drive-ins near you?
No, there is one in Sydney though. There must be some drive-in somewhere. I mean, Halifax is a fairly large place, but I've never heard about anyone. There might be one somewhere in Dartmouth or something.
I mean, if the answer is to bring back drive-ins, I'd be cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. And the drive-in experience is kind of cool. So, yeah, that's something. But, hockey is resuming. The NHL, is resuming. I mean, none of the other hockey is. I mean, everything else is canceled. But NHL is the top, and it's all about money, right? So, like, no way we're canceling it. So, I mean, I am looking forward to watching games. We'll see how it goes. I mean, certain players, obviously, it can't be perfect. Players have tested positive. Other players have opted out, as is their right, although I'm sure you can feel conflicted about that, right? Because it's just like, you hear about this hockey player saying, I've opted out. And you're like, for family reasons, don't want to put them at risk. And you're like, I respect that. But it's also, most people aren't in your position, are they? Most people, one, can't just opt out without losing their job, because not only do these hockey players not have to worry about not losing their job, but they have millions of dollars anyway, so they're going to get through this. Most of us, it's just like, I choose to opt out to going back to my shift at the restaurant. They'll say, oh, that's interesting, you're fucking fired.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, that's what I'm saying, because if you're under contract, and I'm sure most of these guys are, right? So like, if they choose not to come back and play, that's going to be a violation of contract, so they can terminate them. I mean,
I don't know. It has something. They wrote up this big thing called a return to play thing. It's all in there how that contractually works. So as far as I know, none of these guys are penalized in any way. They're,
really.
I don't even think they're. I don't even know if they're losing money on it. I don't know. Well, that's what I mean. Like, fuck that.
Why would you even risk going back to play then?
Yeah. Why would anybody? Well, I mean, I get it to a certain extent. One, you're a young athlete. They always have an air of invincibility. Two, as disillusioned as I can be, and I realize a lot of it is about money, they still do care about the game, and you only have a limited window.
Yeah.
If you're a pro athlete in any sport, right? So you're like, the people, on the spectrum of this, as far as hockey, actual players go, and obviously not the smaller people that are affected, because let's face it, if hockey's coming back to a certain extent, but all these people that worked in the arenas and stuff, they're still fucked, right? But I feel most sorry for the draft class of 2020, because the draft should have happened by now, but obviously it couldn't. And even once they're drafted, they have no idea what the fuck it's going to mean going forward.
Yeah.
You're this 18-year-old player. You spent your whole life, your family has sacrificed. You put everything into it. It's your dream. For some of these guys, even if I get called like 209th, like that's amazing that I was drafted. Like maybe I'll never play in the NHL, but I was drafted. Big accomplishment. And like it all leads up to this. And then you have like these weird circumstances. I know it's all a sliding scale because, there's stuff that matters a lot more than sports. But, the fact is sports matter in that they're people dedicate their lives to it. People make their living off it and stuff. So it's not like it's all completely pointless. So yeah, there's going to be on the 28th and 29th, there's going to be every team gets to play one exhibition game. And on August 1st, the play-in series starts.
So they're going to be playing just in empty stadiums?
Yeah, they're both in Canada, which I think is the right thing. So there's no jumping back and forth between borders or anything. All the players will be in Canada, and the west one is Edmonton, the east one is Toronto, and those are the hub cities. And they're gonna have the minimum thing, no crowds, and the teams can have like the minimum amount of personnel with them and whatever. I mean, it's gonna be weird, but at least it'll be something to finally fucking watch.
Oh man.
So I have a few things to look forward to at the end of the month. I have that, and also July 30th is when the Netflix Transformers finally starts, and I'm really looking forward to that. I've been really big into Transformers the last couple of months, and that show looks really cool. Bought some toys, which I probably was kind of too much money, but oh well.
What sort of animation are they using?
It's going to be like a 3D animation, but it looks really good. It actually really follows the style. Like I said, there's been lots of. It's not like there haven't been. For 20-some years, there's been Transformers shows, and I haven't given a shit about pretty much any of them. So this is obviously very Generation 1 inspired, which is why I care, right? It's called it's this 3-part trilogy. It's the War for Cybertron trilogy, and I finally, for the longest time, we didn't know what the third part was called. The first part's Siege, which takes place on Cybertron. The second part's Earthrise, which obviously takes place on Earth, and the third part, which nobody knows anything about, finally we know is called Kingdom. I have no idea what that means, but and there's a toy line for each one. But what's weird is there's also, just to make things confusing, there's a subline imprint. So what that means is, each phase, Earthrise, Siege, they all have their toy lines. In fact, Siege is already over. Siege was 2019. They're already off the shelves pretty much, and they're on to Earthrise. And the Earthrise are some of the toys I've been buying. But there's also just one that comes in boxes that has Netflix on it that talks about the series, just called War for Cybertron Trilogy. So that's confusing, isn't it? And most of it are repaints of the Siege figures. So I actually have one of them. I have him in car mode at the moment. This is Siege version of Sideswipe. So that's why he doesn't look like an ordinary Earth car, because this is a Cybertronian mode. So this is like a Cybertronian car. So this is Sideswipe.
Cool. So
yeah.
How much was that?
Oh man, way more than he should be.
Really?
Basically, at least as far as Canadian money goes, the way I would say is Transformers are basically, you think of what you might think they're worth, and then you add 10. Like, I would think that this would be worth $20, right? Yeah. So it was 30. It was $29.99.
Yeah, it's not too bad, I guess. It's
here is, and then he's from a class called Deluxe Class. This is Voyager Class. This is Grapple. I'm really happy with him, but he was $39.99. So that's a lot, right? That's a lot. I'm really happy with him. This is Grapple. He looks a lot like he's a Generation 1 guy. He turns into like a truck with a crane. Okay. He is really cool, and he's really well made. I'm actually really happy with him, but he was not cheap. And when you're in your 30s, it's hard to justify things like this unless you're a big time collector, which I'm not, but maybe I'm starting to collect it a little bit. But,
at least they're good quality though.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that, as I said, for years I did not give a shit about these toys or these shows because I didn't think the quality was good for any of them. So this is the first time in quite a few years where I've cared. I think it's good quality, and I think it's going to be a good show. I'm really looking forward to it. So as I said, the end of July, start of August, some minor things to look forward to there. Especially when you have things like the year that's been so far, you have to take your little things to be happy about, right? We would love for a big, amazing thing to come down that says, it's gone forever, and all the economies are bouncing back, and everyone's going to get, free jet skis. And it's probably not going to happen. So you have to take your little things where you can, and that's why
wins, yeah.
And go into the things that we talk about anyway. Video games, comics, movies, stuff like that. Yeah. All right, so we've gone over 3 hours. We could have done another movie. See, we could have done another movie, but that's okay. We got some other talking, and then we'll do another live commentary later. So thanks for if anybody stuck around for all that extracurricular stuff. That's cool, but that was before that, an hour or so ago. That was The Phantom, 1996 with Billy Zane. Not too bad of a movie. Not as bad as you might think on paper when you read about how it was a big flop and stuff. And it's just more of a kind of movie than anything that bad.
Yeah.
Again, in that vein, if you want to see bad, watch The Shadow. It's fucking bad.
All right, guys. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time.
All right, peace out. Bye.